clerk to please call the roll.
Amara,
Present.
Councilmember Berlant,
Here.
Councilmember Holmes,
Here.
Vice Mayor Riddell Harris. Here. And Mayor Dowden Calvillo.
Present. Thank you very much. We do have a quorum for the purposes of tonight's meeting, and Councilman Berlant is participating via Zoom as authorized by the state of emergency that's still in effect until February 28th. So thank you very much for joining us. Where are you tonight, Councilman?
I don't want to rub it in, but I'm at a work meeting in Santa Barbara.
In Santa Barbara.
So I'm very sorry to not be with you in person today.
Well, thank you very much for taking time out of your schedule to be here for this important meeting. Appreciate that very much. All right, Councilwoman Riddell Harris, will you please lead us in the pledge?
Please stand. Salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Under point of privilege, as the mayor, I would like to announce or actually request that we adjourn our meeting tonight in memory of Monroe DeJournette. And Monroe recently passed away. He was on February 1st, actually. I have a little statement here. He was 93 years old. He and his wife, Betty, had moved a few months ago to be closer to family. So he was in Oregon at the time, but they have a special place in their hearts for their years of living in and contributing to the greater Auburn community. An avid and active musician, Monroe's vision in 1987 was to create a community symphony where musicians and audiences together could enjoy orchestral music, which actually led to the founding of the Auburn Symphony Orchestra. He collaborated with the Auburn Chamber of Commerce to create the orchestra, and a few years later, it became a standalone nonprofit that is still thriving 35 years later as the premier community orchestra in the Sierra foothills. And I think we have a lot to owe to him because really Roseville doesn't have their own symphony. I mean, Auburn is very fortunate that we have a symphony, and we have to thank Monroe's vision for that. He was a music teacher and promoted music education for children wherever he lived, including serving as a director of the Sacramento Youth Symphony and encouraging the startup of the unique Auburn Symphony Goes to School program more than 20 years ago, which still takes a mini orchestra to local elementary schools. Monroe was a passionate champion of the Auburn State Theater restoration and member of local service club 49er Lions, among his many activities and projects around town. An Army veteran, pioneer smoke jumper, National Park Ranger, and wilderness ranger with the Forest Service, he loved the outdoors and was often assisted in maintaining trails, even as recently as 3 years ago at the ripe old age of 90. In 2000, he was recognized with the McCann Award for Outstanding Community Leadership and Volunteerism. He will be sorely missed, and yet his presence will live on in the work that he did and the legacies he left behind. And I know that they are working to plan a celebration of life here in Auburn, and Bob and Stephanie Snyder will be working on that. So without objection, we will adjourn tonight's meeting in Monroe's memory, and may he rest in peace. All right, next item on the agenda is public comment. This is an opportunity for any member of the audience or the public that may be online to address the council on a matter that is not scheduled for action tonight. Please note that we cannot take action on said items, but we can refer those items to staff for subsequent council consideration in another noticed meeting date. So with that, I'll open public comment. Is there any public comment? Yes.
Almost white.
You took the long route. That was kind of I don't know what.
I don't know. I got to work on that one. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and esteemed members of the City Council. I'm Mike Limberg with the Sustainable Advisory Committee and appreciate very much the convening of this special session for this purpose. Of course, the reason we're here tonight is because timing is everything.
I'm going to just stop you because this is public comment strictly for the purposes of discussing an item that's not on the agenda. So
Correct.
if this is pursuant to an item on the agenda, then I'd wait. But if it's an off item agenda, then please proceed.
Fair enough. I just want to say that the work of the committee and the work of other committees in the city of Auburn are, I find, in a rare moment of alignment in this particular issue, and do believe that tonight's discussion will reflect well on aligning those goals for everybody involved and a better future for the city of Auburn. So I look forward to the discussion and a positive outcome. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment on an item not on the agenda tonight? Madam Clerk, any public comment online?
There was no public comment received.
All right, thank you very much. I'll hereby close public comment and move to the next item on the agenda. This is the youth student representation on committees and commissions. This is an item that is being brought to you by myself and Vice Mayor Riddell Harris. And we are asking the council to authorize the appointment of a youth representative to the Traffic Committee, the Arts Commission, and the Sustainability Advisory Committee. We did have one minor modification to this. Initially, we were suggesting that there be a residency requirement. We'd like to just modify that to say that students that don't necessarily reside in the city limits, but attend an Auburn high school or equivalent would be eligible for appointment to either of these, to any of these committees. So that is the one modification. That you have the staff report, of course, before you. Thank you to our Madam Clerk for helping us with that. And I'll open this up for any questions from the council before I go to public comment. Yes,
Yes.
Councilman Holmes.
I have a question on the Sustainability Advisory Committee membership. There are a couple of items that talk about a member, not a youth member necessarily, but a member representing transportation and or air or water pollution control programs within the Auburn community. And there's another one about agriculture and light manufacturing use within the Auburn community. Now, what is the definition of the Auburn community?
So, Councilman Holmes, this is the existing resolution, and the only thing we've done here, we've added item number 7. So the other provisions are already in the existing enabling resolution, and Auburn community really was meant to encompass more than just the city limits. So I remember when we talked about this a couple of years ago, it was broadening the applicability so that folks that didn't necessarily live in the city limits that could still participate.
Well, I
Yeah,
understand.
Mayor.
Yes.
That's, and I would concur with that. Because we weren't sure if we can find someone that fit the exact descriptions, and we wanted more of a broad opportunity.
Mhm.
We also have a lot of North Auburn folks who really participate in our community and have a lot invested in the
Yes.
city of Auburn. And so even though our city limits don't extend that far, we want to make sure that we're including the folks that are really invested in the community, but aren't necessarily in the city limits themselves.
Yeah.
So I would say North Auburn and sometimes a little bit of Loomis. I mean, it's
It
kind
could
of
even be Ophir. I
could
mean,
be Ophir, like,
Newcastle. I mean, it's not, well, Newcastle might be, but yeah.
but-
Okay, so it's ill-defined.
it's
is what it is.
ill-defined kind of on purpose because we want to make sure we can get the right people for the committees,
Okay.
as long as a lot of times they may not live there, but maybe they have a business in town or things like that that
Mhm.
are impacted by that community.
All right.
Are there any other questions by the council at this time?
I'm ready to make a motion.
I'll go ahead and open it. I'm going to open this item for public comment. Is there any public comment on this item? All right, hearing none, I'll bring it back to the council. Is there a motion?
I'd like to make a motion
Yes.
by resolution, add a youth representative to the Traffic Committee. By resolution, add a youth representative to the Arts Commission, and by resolution, add a youth representative to the Sustainability Advisory Committee.
I'll second.
Second.
And if I may, does that motion include the revision proposed by the mayor?
Inclusive of the proposed revision.
Thank you very much for the clarification. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Amara,
Yes.
Berlant,
Yes.
Holmes,
Aye.
Riddell Harris. Aye. Mayor Dowden Calvillo.
Aye. Let the record show that the motion has been adopted unanimously. Thank you very much, council. Next item on the agenda, this is solar and interconnection applications. I know that we have some members here in the public, and I did want to read, I know that we received an email from our attorney, and I wanted to read that for the purposes of the record, if I can find it. Just a moment here. It's a lengthy email, but I do want to just read it into the record for the purposes of that. It says here, a memo was provided to the city council yesterday by a member of the Sustainability Advisory Committee recommending that the city council at tonight's meeting proceed with the industry grade audit with Centrica Business Solutions on tonight's agenda. There are 3 items, 2 of which are related to this recommendation. Number 1, discussion on whether or not to direct staff.
I'd just like to interrupt for 1 minute, if that's okay. I just want to know if that's a work product. Is that confidential? Is it appropriate to disseminate that to the public?
You mean the email? Is this attorney-client privileged?
So yes, but as to the council, if the council were disclosing it here in public, that would waive that privilege. We could also ask questions and answer it that way and have the information
Mhm.
provided if that's what.
Do you have any advice on whether or not is there any risk in
Yeah, so I think the question is the scope of the agenda items that are on the agenda for today, and I'm happy to discuss that briefly on what the scope of the agenda is and the recommendation that was made.
So
Okay.
rather than reading it, you would give
Okay.
us a summary.
All right, then why don't you go ahead then and give us a summary of the scope so that we can ensure that we are very clear on what the scope is and what will and will not be eligible for discussion today.
Sure, I'm happy to do that. So there are 2 items now coming up that are related to this recommendation that you all are aware of and received. And I believe the clerk has copies of that recommendation. If anyone else in the public has not received it and would like to receive a copy of what we're discussing right now, that is available from the clerk as well. There are 2 items. The first is a solar and
Oh,
interconnection.
excuse me, there's some people in the audience that can't hear. Is it possible to speak up or can you turn up the mic?
Is that better?
Yeah, you have to really
Yes.
speak right into it. Thank you.
Excuse me. I'm happy to be louder. There are 2 items tonight that are relevant to that recommendation. The first is the solar and interconnection applications. That's item 2 on the agenda. And then it's number 3, council member item added for information and discussion. The request to proceed with a particular aspect of this project, which was for the audit agreement with Centrica, is not listed on the agenda for today. So this agenda includes a discussion and a direction to staff, if the council chooses to do so. First, to proceed with applications for interconnectivity, and second, what method of contracting to use for that, which would be direction. If the council proceeded and gave that direction, staff would then have direction on which contracting method to proceed with, and then would follow that direction and follow those procedures. And the second is a discussion information item only on several proposals that were received by the Sustainability Advisory Committee through a process that they had done separately. And that's an information item only on the agenda. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, so for clarification purposes, the scope of the IGA goes beyond the interconnectivity applications, and that is not before us today. So we will not be discussing that. The second thing is that council's not authorized at this time to authorize any vendor for any contract. We're simply going to discuss whether or not we wish to pursue the interconnectivity applications, and if so, which method we choose to pursue that action. So there will be no discussion of any specific vendors in that particular relationship. And so I think we understand that it's very narrow scope here. So I will be ensuring that the discussion is based on that narrow scope. I'd like to ask my colleagues on the council if there are any questions about that. Councilwoman Amara?
Yes, I think our attorney said there can be discussion, just no motion.
We-
Or to solicit a vendor at this time. Or no motion to approve a vendor.
So under item 3, there can be discussion about the 2 prior proposals that were submitted, because that's an information item and a discussion item that is properly on the agenda, what was submitted there.
But that's, and just to clarify, that's under item number 3. Agenda item 2, when we're discussing whether or not we wish to pursue the interconnectivity applications, we are not to discuss specific vendors. We're not to authorize the vendor. We are talking about the method by which we wish to pursue if we decide to choose that path to go with the interconnectivity, correct?
That's right. And that's how the agenda title is written.
So we can certainly speak to, there are as an informational item under agenda item 3. Once we get to agenda item 3, we can discuss those vendors in that particular agenda item. But again, we are not scheduled to award any contract, or it's an information only discussion, but we can have discussion under item number 3 for that, but not under item number 2. Okay. Further questions from my colleagues on the council before we commence this with the staff report? Hearing none, thank you. Staff?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You have in your packet a staff report, which I won't go through in significant detail, but I will make a comment that summarizes that report and give you a more specific recommendation. At the January 23rd council meeting, staff was directed by council consensus to place on a special meeting agenda a discussion specific to solar and whether to pursue interconnection applications for 7 sites: the Corporation Yard, City Hall, Police Station, Wastewater Treatment Plant, and Fire Stations 1, 2, and 3. Subsequent to that direction, 2 council members per council policy requested an additional item be placed on the agenda, which we just had that discussion about. Excuse me. Addition of this item to the agenda does not alter the original direction provided to staff. That is to place on the agenda an item for council to determine whether or not to pursue submittal of interconnectivity applications to PG&E for the identified sites. The staff report that is presented to you is from City Attorney Gary Bell, Public Works Director Minjal Dean, Director of Administrative Services Nathan Bagwell, as well as myself. The discussion is generated in light of the fact that the California Public Utilities Commission has opted to change its net energy metering, or NEM 2.0 solar tariff program, and replace it with NEM 3.0. The change has spurred a sense of urgency in that applications for interconnectivity under NEM 2 program must be submitted to PG&E no later than April 13th for consideration. The primary change to the program is a reduction of the current average export rate of 30 cents per kilowatt hour of excess energy to 8 cents per kilowatt hour. Projects that meet the submittal deadline and are subsequently approved have 3 years from the date of approval to install the project. Cost of submittal is $800 per application. During PG&E's review, additional information may be requested at an additional unknown cost. After further staff review and questions from several council members, it became clear it would be helpful for staff to provide a more focused recommendation than simply discuss whether or not direction should be given to staff to pursue interconnectivity applications for any or all of the identified 7 sites. Therefore, staff's recommendation is if council action is to direct staff to pursue interconnect applications for 1 or more of the 7 sites, that direction be given to utilize Government Code Section 4217 as the means to secure a contract to perform the work. That would include preparation of the interconnectivity application, design, and construction of the project. This will provide opportunity for staff to create a list of potential vendors to solicit request for qualifications or request for proposal, and then provide a recommendation back to council. I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have on that or the staff report.
Thank you very much, Madam City Manager. I appreciate that. I'd like to open it up for council members who have questions. Are there questions, or I would like to reserve for comments after, but questions on the staff report and the recommendation? Councilman Berlant?
Well,
I don't know.
I have some questions.
You have some questions? Yes, please.
you
There
too.
There was a lot of different information about the different various sites within. Some things that were a little confusing to me is that there wasn't a lot of information on City Hall. It seemed like it was expensive, but I was wondering if you could explain a little bit more about why it was substantially more expensive than the other sites to do the I think it's because you would have, it wouldn't be on the rooftop, it would be on a separate location, and it would require some additional work in the parking lot and things, but I just wanted to go into.
That's correct. And I will have Minjal Dean add additional comments. So you are correct. There are trenching and paving costs associated with the parking lot, as well as being ADA compliant. Those added, I believe it was around $40,000 to the overall cost. And I'll have Minjel address that more specifically.
Good evening, Council, Madam Mayor, Mental Dean, Public Works Manager. To the city manager's point, there was additional costs associated with getting the rooftop solar here at City Hall. First of all, we couldn't do it on the roof because there's just too much mechanical equipment up there for it to be feasible. The next best option would be to put it in the parking lot, at which point we would be required to make some upgrades for the parking lot. We would have to repave it. And with repaving it, we would then have to meet the ADA requirements, which there's associated costs with that. Staff estimated that the additional cost for just the paving of the parking lot to be approximately $60,000 with whatever it would cost to actually put in the solar array. Well, on top of that, I should say. So after looking at it very carefully, we were estimating, and these were just rough estimates based off of market value, at around $480-something thousand to get this project done here.
And then labor hours wise, that would be a significant lift for your department to redo the parking lot and add all that time and energy. I mean, in comparison to doing a rooftop solar, is it significantly more work to do something where we're having to redo the whole parking lot and do ADA compliance?
Oh, absolutely, because there would be inspections associated with that. Anytime we're doing any kind of paving or anything like that, our public works staff would have to make sure that everything is being done to meet code. We would incur additional staff time here. There's just more that can be, yes.
Okay. And then I had one more question, which I probably is you, maybe fire. There's a request to put solar on 3 rooftops, but we only use 2 fire stations. And so normally you want to cover the usage of a building that's being used. And so I didn't know if there's been talk about switching buildings and things like that. I just didn't know, it doesn't make as much sense to put solar on a building you're not going to be using. So I didn't know if there were plans further of how we were going to utilize those fire houses and there was going to be a switch and things like that.
That's a good question. It is my understanding that Fire Station 1 could potentially be used for another use than fire service. It's not being used for that currently.
Okay.
I don't know that we are very far into the process of determining what the use of that building might be.
Okay. But at this point, it's vacant.
Correct.
Okay. All right. And then the savings numbers that were used to determine the value of that, were they based on the current electricity use or what we think it might use at some point?
That would be a question for.
All right. I'm just trying, because it seemed like it was on par with some of the other firehouses that aren't vacant. And so I didn't know if it was just super inefficient or why it would have such high usage.
There's a couple of reasons for that. Well, it's
I know, like, using it when we're not around.
So Station 1 is not it's not a house station. You are correct. Station 2 and Station 3, which would be Sacramento Street and Maidu, are only staffed stations right now. Station 1 is oftentimes used for training, and I know the chief is looking to possibly have it be rented out as a facility for local fire agencies to utilize to continue that kind of use. The numbers that you have in front of you are based on current usage at the station. Though it is not a manned station, we still keep equipment there. We do have ice machines and other things that are constantly running there. So there is some usage, and the numbers reflect what the current usage would be, not any future use.
Okay. Is there an opportunity at all these buildings to do additional energy efficiency to reduce their energy use? Because that's when you're talking about the loading order for energy efficiency and renewable energy. Normally you do energy efficiency first and then renewable energy. So is there opportunities we haven't pursued yet to possibly reduce the energy use of some of these buildings?
Oh, absolutely. You can see in this room, not all the lights are LED and things like that. And at some of these older fire stations, there's certainly things we can do. We can get more efficient HVAC systems and things along that line. So there are certainly other available opportunities there.
Okay, great. I think that's it for now.
Thank you. Councilwoman Amara?
So are we asking questions on the whole staff report?
Yeah, item 2. Mhm.
Yes. Okay, so you can stay right up there. So Mr. Dean,
Yes, ma'am.
I know you know that electrical utility costs are rising. You'd have to agree with that probably, especially city utilities. So I guess my question is, you think it's a good idea then to pursue solar to try and alleviate some of our costs?
I think the city should explore any opportunity that's in front of them for reducing energy costs. Absolutely.
Okay, and is it a good idea now to look into the solar? And do you agree with trying to get under the deadline of the NEM 2, NEM 3 coming up.
With the change from the NEM 2 to NEM 3,
Yeah.
it certainly would make sense for the city to look into what those cost savings would be in order to
Yeah.
move forward.
And then on the staff report, it says that we get roughly 75% less than our current if we aren't grandfathered in.
That is based off of the numbers that PG&E put out. That is correct.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so I'm just trying to give a background here. So, and then also on the staff report, page 22, I wanted to go over that a little bit. I'm assuming that this is work product that you did. It's with regard to the bids for the interconnect application to PG&E. It says that you were not able to, most providers preferred not to separate out that part. So can you just tell us a little bit about, what you did with regard to try and solicit vendors to just do the interconnect application?
Oh, certainly I can speak to that. So staff did reach out to several solar companies. None of them exclusively said that they wouldn't do it. It's just was a little bit more difficult to get them to provide numbers to just what the interconnectivity is. Based off of how their business model is laid out, they certainly make more money from completing the entire project. So interconnectivity only was a little bit more difficult to procure, but it's not impossible.
But you weren't able to provide us with any viable vendors that said they
Not
would
at the
do it.
time, because there was no urgency for any of those companies to just provide us an internet connectivity application.
Okay.
Because we're talking about it today.
Okay, so so with regard to, and then how we would accomplish this, what do you think the best way is to accomplish, to try and get this interconnect application done so that we can come under the deadline? Or do you have an opinion? If you don't, that's fine.
I think I'll-
think our city manager has given us the recommendation. And so
wait,
with
I
all
would-
due respect, Menzel does report to the city manager. And so I would just like to make that statement and allow Joan to respond.
And since I asked the question, if Menzel, if you can't or don't want to respond, that's fine. I'll be asking the city attorney for some questions too, and our city manager.
I'll defer to the city manager.
So in order to meet, assuming that there's a determination to move forward with any of these sites, in order to meet the legal requirements of one of the three options that's detailed in the staff report, I think that is the appropriate process to follow going forward. Does that answer your question?
Not really. What do you mean by, I guess my question is, so you're saying we have to follow a process to move forward?
Correct.
Okay. And so my question is, that's why I was kind of directing it to Mr. Dean, because my question is, since it was pretty difficult, it seems like, to find vendors that would be able to do just the interconnect application, does he have an opinion, or in this case, do you have an opinion as to which of the three processes would be appropriate?
So
that would help us be successful in getting this application completed.
Yes. And my recommendation is, if you opt as a council to move forward with one of these sites, that we follow Government Code Section 4217. And we looked at the three options. That seems to us to be the most expeditious way to pursue your direction.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and Mr. Dean, then my other question is have you had any communication with PG&E in terms of the time, the date, and all in that?
The time for,
Like the review,
I can ask a question. And if he has, so if my question's not clear, just ask me. But what I'm trying to ask you is, have you had any communication? So, we know that the date is April 15th, I believe, is
14th.
14th?
13th,
It's
yeah.
the
13th,
yeah.
13th. Okay, so have you been able to communicate or have you had any communication with PG&E in terms of if we get it in before that date, is there an opportunity if we have something that's not to their liking, that we can rectify it? Is that a possibility, or have you had that discussion with PG&E? Do you know?
Well, yeah, so obviously if we get the application in on the 13th and there's revisions, then it wouldn't be an accepted application on that date. We have to have an accepted application by April 13th. That's what that date really truly means. We can apply today, but if we have subsequent revisions until April 15th, then we don't get under that. So to answer your question, yes, getting it on the 13th wouldn't give us the opportunity to do so, but if we get it in prior to that, or there may be no revisions necessary, we don't know that yet.
Okay, so good. So I think what you're saying is the sooner the better.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then I have some questions for our attorney. So I just wanted to could you just explain briefly the intent of 4217? And I think you did a good job of that on in the staff report and page 17. You don't have to read it, but maybe you want to go over that a little bit. I think it's important for the public to know that what 4217 entails briefly and the legislative intent.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. I'd also like to give some additional information on other contracting procedures and background. Do you want me to answer the 4217 question first or give the background on other?
Gary, can you speak more into your mic just to make
that
sure
would be
people?
My apologies.
Mhm.
I'd also like to give some additional information on other contracting procedures.
How do you know
that
I wasn't going to ask you though?
Well, I don't know, but I just want to be clear because I do think it's important for part of the discussion. So I can give that now or do 4217.
However you feel comfortable.
Okay, I'll give the background on the contracting because it might lead to further questions and it's
Sure.
part of this discussion. So the agenda title includes possibly direction on the method to contract. State law and the municipal code includes two different, broadly speaking, two different procedures for contracting. There are equipment, supplies, and services on one side and public works on another. Public works is defined under the public contract code, state law, and the city has a municipal code provision that implements that in chapter 37 and in chapter 36 of the municipal code. For equipment, services, and supplies, there are contracting procedures in the municipal code that allow you to streamline this. And in certain circumstances, a solicitation process can be truncated. And if it's specialized services, completely avoided under the municipal code. I bring that up because the drawing of plans and the submitting of an application is not a public work. And under your municipal code, if that was the scope of work, it could be contracted for much more quickly, and that's not mentioned in your staff report. We analyzed the scope of work as we understood it, which was everything, including installation of the solar panels and the other work, which does qualify as a public work. And so that needs to be analyzed under the rules that apply to that. So the scope of work you choose dictates the procedure and the process that has to be followed, and it will change if there's a smaller scope of work. So I want to make that point clear for the procedure that the council chooses. So under 4217, as I understand it, and divining legislative intent can sometimes be difficult, but they did include it in the statute to give maximum flexibility to cities to contract for this type of work as defined in that statute, which includes everything from feasibility studies to the actual construction. This is one of the rare circumstances where the state has combined both of these things into a single contract. California typically for public works divides these out, where there's a design, bid, build is the typical process. One firm designs, city takes the designs, goes out to bid, and then another firm builds the project. And that's the process that typically comes before you. There are exceptions to that. 4217.10 is one of them that allows all of it in a single contract. Design build is the other example, and that's also mentioned in your staff report. So the purpose of that statute is to give you flexibility. It does not require competitive bidding in the same way that the other statutes do require. this council would need to make certain findings in order to use that procedure. And you'd also have to have a notice public hearing at least 2 weeks before you awarded such a contract, similar to notice that you give for other public hearings.
So that, just summarizing then, it's an opportunity for cities to not have to do the bidding process if we so choose, because it streamlines it and it offers us more flexibility.
That's right.
But an important component of 4217 is that we have to be assured that it is financially advantageous to us.
That's right.
That's some of the findings.
That's what the two findings are designed to ensure that there's a cost saving. Yes.
Okay. And so, and then the other finding, the other component of 4217 is that there has to be a public hearing 2 weeks in advance, a published public hearing 2 weeks in advance before we can authorize a vendor. Is that right?
Correct.
And so if we were to follow 4217 tonight, we would have to go out for publication and then have a public hearing 2 weeks from when it's published. Is that correct?
Yes, if the council were to give direction to staff to use 4217.10 and following to solicit and also to use that procedure to contract, yes, there's a component in those statutes that doesn't require, but authorizes a solicitation, an RFP, RFQ. The city's municipal code also has a procedure in it as well for solicitation for equipment, supplies, and services. And then there would be a contract negotiation after that process concluded for reviewing of the different proposals. The length of time for that is unknown for contract negotiations. That could be quite short. Theoretically, depends on what's in there and how long those negotiations go. And then, yes, staff would post a public hearing notice and publish that at least 2 weeks before a meeting here, and then you'd have a public hearing on an agenda.
And then at that time, you would have the opportunity to hire a vendor or.
Right. At that public hearing, the city council could award the contract if it can make those findings. Yes.
Okay. And okay, so it sounds like based on the April timeline that, I mean, it probably, if we're going to follow 4217, we need to do this sooner than later because you have that publication 2 weeks, and in the 2 weeks you have to negotiate a contract.
Well, I think you'd probably negotiate a contract before the notice were issued, or at least concurrently with it if you thought you were close to completing those negotiations. Yes.
Okay. Okay. And okay, those are the only questions I have right now.
Thank you. Councilman Holmes?
Yes, I have, looking at the locations where in the staff report, I'm wondering why, we've got a big open parking lot over on Blocker Drive near the railroad station, why that is not included in the potential places for some kind of solar photovoltaic system.
We were given very specific direction to include the 7 sites that are included in the staff report.
When we talked about this, Councilman Holmes, at the last meeting, we talked about just the 7 sites. And so because of that direction at what happened at our council meeting, that's what staff then responded to. They didn't take away or add any additional sites. So they were following the directions of the council from our last meeting,
All right.
which just included 7 sites that are in that staff report.
So can we add another site?
Well, at this point in time, what's before us is whether or not we wish to pursue interconnectivity at either of the 7 sites that are listed.
Yeah.
I think that if you wanted to discuss solar at another site, that would be for another discussion, another meeting,
All right.
because staff have not analyzed that. There's no information. There's nothing that's been done on that. So.
All right.
I have a couple more questions after
yeah,
Berlant goes.
Yeah, I'm gonna,
Mhm.
Councilman Holmes, do you have any other questions?
Not at the moment. no.
Okay, Councilwoman Riddell Harris, if you mind, I'd like to go to Councilman
please do.
Berlant.
Mhm.
Councilman Berlant, do you have any questions at this time for staff?
Yeah, thank you. In the staff report, and I don't know if this is for Joan or other Menzel or others, but there's the discussion of the cost of the interconnection application of $800 per site. What I was curious about, though, is what else is required in the application that would come with a cost, i.e., is there a requirement at the time of application to submit plans or other materials that would require us to contract out or to expend dollars in order to build the application itself?
It's my understanding that the application would include the design for that specific site. What we do also understand is that once PG&E begins review of the applications, if they have additional requests for information, that they would notify us, and there would be an additional cost associated with that cost being unknown depending upon what they're asking for. If they asked for that additional information, they would at the same time provide us what the additional cost would be.
I understand the second part, but let's just come back to the actual design of or components of the application. Would there be a cost to include that, or is that like what I heard you say, which is if they come back and ask for additional information or study, then there could be an additional cost? What I'm getting at, Joan, just to be crystal clear, is the $800 per site our financial obligation in this discussion, or is there additional financials that would be a part of tonight's decision?
There would be additional costs, and I will have Mental augment this if necessary. There would be additional costs in terms of design, the actual preparation of of whoever might be doing the work to design the project. Yes.
Do you have a
I'd like to just-
rough estimate of what that might be? Sorry, Mayor, but do you have a rough estimate of what that might be?
I'll defer to Mental on
Or
that.
even
I have
even
not
a
had
range,
conversation.
Menzel, is fine as well. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but if you have, just to give us a ballpark.
That's a difficult thing to estimate at the time, because most vendors kind of build that into their design build. So they might charge us a little bit more just if they're doing just the plans for us. So we don't know specifically what that number would be, but there would be some costs associated with it.
I was just going to clarify, Councilman Berlant, is that, yes, there is the $800 cost for the application, but those drawings have to be submitted as well, and there will be a cost. And it's difficult because we don't necessarily have that. In the packet, there are some examples of a total bid, which would include the drawings and then the actual construction as well. So we can kind of take a look at that and sort of ascertain what, maybe pick it apart a little bit, but you could probably guess it's not going to go over that. Again, for the item 2, in the packet, there was a potential cost here, total cost, for the courtyard at about $142,000. So we can probably figure it's not going to be more than $142,000. It'll be
Can I
less
ask
than that.
what page you're referring to?
It's page 24 of the packet.
Okay, I mean, obviously what I'm trying to,
On the whole, in the industry, you don't break out those costs. It's just like getting an estimate for getting and a design done for getting something put up, a deck or something like that. It's just incorporated into the cost of the project. So normally you don't submit that. You would have the same contractor do the whole project together. And so that would just be incorporated in. That's the normal practice. So there aren't a lot of contractors that do that separately. So it would be hard to estimate that because that's just not how it's done in the industry.
no, yeah, and that makes complete sense, and I appreciate that, but we're being asked to say whether we want to build the deck or not. And so to understand, before to commit to doing that, what is the range that we are looking at not just what the bids that are included in item 2 may or may not be, especially since that, I don't have a full idea, and maybe we'll discuss it in the next item, whether that is within par, whether that's a good deal. That's what makes the splitting of items 2 and 3 a little bit more challenging. But thank you for those answers, and appreciate everyone's add into that. Trying to go back to my notes here, my additional question I had. Joan, I'm going to just put you on the spot if you don't mind. I think this is where Councilwoman Amara was going, but the recommendation in the staff report is kind of vague, and maybe that's your due diligence to leave it up to us. But I'm curious if staff has a recommendation of what you think we should do.
In terms of the 7 sites,
Correct.
I think if we had any recommendation, it would fall back to what the city has previously done on the courtyard and the police station. The budget does reflect an amount to do the corporation yard. If there is a desire for the council to move forward with any one of those 7, we have, and the fact that we have a short time frame in front of us, we have information on both of those that would enable us to move forward fairly quickly.
And just so I'm clear, the corporation yard and the police department, those are the 2 locations that you would recommend?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Madam Mayor, that's the only questions that I have at this point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilman Berlant. Just a couple questions. I just wanted to confirm, Gary, that government code section, let's see here, I gotta have my glasses on, the 4217, it does not exempt us from the city's municipal code, specifically with regards to chapter 36 and 37. So even if we're to utilize this particular provision, this does not exempt us from our own municipal code, correct?
Yes, and the reason for that is the municipal code applies to solicitation for equipment, supplies, services, and for public works. And this, as this is proposed and as 4217.10 and following envisions, is that it's a hybrid of these different things. And so there's a municipal code that requires, and that's chapter 37, I believe. 36 is for public works, or it's the inverse of those. State law requires that you have a policy on the books for competitive selection anytime you contract. And so those 2 code sections continue to apply. The exception in state law in 4217.10 is about the competitive bidding at the state level that might otherwise apply under the public contract code, and to allow you to combine these services together in a way that you typically wouldn't be able to do.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So it is clear that we can certainly use this provision, but we still need to follow the 2, 1 or 2 of the chapters of our municipal code. We're not exempt from following our own rules and regulations that we've established pursuant to state law. So, okay, good. I've had an opportunity to really review a lot of this, and I don't actually have any further questions, except that I do want to talk a little bit about maintenance. Now, that's not really covered here. We're talking about whether or not we wish to pursue the interconnectivity of these sites. But I think about interconnectivity, and then if we decide to pursue solar, and there are maintenance issues and costs and so forth, and we haven't really incorporated that into any of our analysis, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I do have a question also with regards to our existing solar array at the wastewater treatment plant. That was established in 2010, correct? That's correct. And we have a PPA with the vendor who installed that equipment? Okay. Great. Could I just, not right now, but later, I'd like to get a copy of that PPA just for my own edification, please. So education. Okay, good. All right. I'm going to now open this up. I'm sorry. Yes, Councilwoman Riddell Harris, you had additional questions,
Sometimes
please.
being first means that you forget to ask the
Yes.
questions or you think of other things. I had a couple more quick questions for staff. I just wanted to confirm right now, we are currently under Pioneer's Green Energy Program. So we are currently supplying 100% green energy to all of our buildings, correct?
It's not quite 100%, but it's very close to that. And the reason I say that is we have the wastewater treatment plant, which has its separate PPA.
But it's
Yes,
still
but
green
that's-
energy.
It's
so
still
green
green energy.
Yeah,
Yes,
so
that's
there-
correct.
Between the wastewater treatment plant and Pioneer, there's no, everything is green energy, renewable energy that's being supplied and being used by the city.
That's correct.
And so with that, there would not be any carbon reduction by a switching over to solar because currently we have a zero carbon, zero emission energy use throughout the city. I worked really hard on this for the first year that I was in office, so I just wanted to confirm that that's still true and that we are, I think we're the only city in the county.
We are, Councilwoman, we are the only jurisdiction under Pioneer that is currently subscribing to the Green 100 program. I'm trying to get the others to participate, but we are really the only one. So you're right.
And Roseville's not either, so we're the only ones in Placer County. So I just wanted to confirm that that's still the case. With that in mind, the goal of switching to solar as a city would be to reduce costs, right? Not for any environmental reasons, because we're already meeting all of our environmental goals that we've already confirmed last February.
Yes.
Correct? Okay. These eight projects, though they may be managed by a contractor, this is probably a Menjo question, though they'd be managed by a contractor, they would take additional work because we'd have to manage safety, do interactions with PG&E, things like that. Considering the amount of time and energy it would take to do 8 solar projects, what would we not be able to do as a city? There's only so much Menjo time and other public works time. Is there, how much time and energy would that take? And what would we need to prioritize out? Because we only have so much time and energy as a city, and we've already prioritized lots of things for you over the next couple of years. So how much would we have to give up or prioritize out in order to be able to do this?
Well, there would certainly need to be some change. What those changes would be would come down to the council's direction.
Okay.
I wouldn't make that decision on my own. But,
What are some things you're working on that could be options for us to take out?
oh, well, there's a myriad of things that myself, James and Natalie are working on. We're doing a 2-year overlay program. We're moving that forward. So we're also doing a 2-year service treatment program. We currently have the project at the wastewater treatment plant going on for the sludge dewatering. There's a lot of storm drain issues we're dealing with right now. We're dealing with a lot of storm drain stuff throughout the city. We have a lot of sewer issues we're dealing with the city. The last bit of rain that we had has kind of opened up our eyes to some things that we weren't aware of. There's a significant amount of projects. There's some,
You don't have any extra bandwidth right now.
I do not,
Is that sufficient?
I do not. So
So
what
we'd have to make some room somewhere for you if we wanted to add these additional projects.
council would certainly have to let me know what their priority is. There would be some changes that would need to
Okay.
be made.
I know that's part of the reason why we originally went with Pioneer was because it was less labor intensive and we have some serious priorities we're trying to work on as a city and some things we're trying to catch up on and regulatory things we're trying to meet. And so I just wanted to make sure that we all, understood that we can't just keep adding to staff's plate and we have to be willing to prioritize. So if we think this is a priority to do, we have to say we're not going to pave some roads or we're not going to do bike lanes or we're not going to do something else. So.
And forgive me
I
for not
just wanted
mentioning
to-
transit, because transit
I
is still
will-
something that.
What do you have to give up? in
Yeah.
order for him
Well,
to-
and we'll just comments. We will reserve
Yeah,
comments.
I'll
for
reserve
after.
comments,
Yeah.
sorry.
Thank you.
So, let's see, I think I had one more. Oh, I think the rest of this, one more question. On any of these projects, will there be any significant infrastructure upgrades as far as transmission or transformers or equipment that we may not be able to get? Because I know transformers are 2 to 3 years out right now. Do you know if we would have to add any significant, maybe at the wastewater treatment plant or maybe here? I don't know if our current systems could accommodate these solar systems. I just know from working in the industry that right now we're telling folks 2 to 3 years for getting a transformer.
So certainly at the wastewater treatment plant, there would be some additional equipment necessary. That would be considered a power producer, or I forget the term that, I forget what,
Well,
what the term that PG&E used. And it could also be anticipated that at the wastewater treatment plant, it would be beyond that $800 threshold for the application as well too. That's the one site we know for sure that it would have significant more costs associated with that. What the other buildings need at this point, it's difficult to say. Could they need additional things? Certainly.
Okay. Just didn't know if there was anything that we knew of.
yes, actually though, before that, thank you. You actually raised a question. It reminded me of a question that I had. Are you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. This is for you, Joan. What I really wanted to know is we have a strategic plan or a task plan, if you will. The council had gone through a process with our former city manager, really outlining the priorities for the city. And can you talk about whether or not, overhauling the city from an energy conservation perspective, was that one of the tasks that was identified in a high priority for the city council?
So I'm not sure I can answer that specifically, but there are a significant number of tasks identified. I don't believe that this particular area has specific tasks identified with it. I think you've all heard me talk about the need to do a strategic plan, and I think that is a priority for the new city manager coming on board. This type of discussion really belongs in that strategic planning process, where the council will identify 5 or 6 top priorities. And those priorities then become the direction for staff and committees to develop their work plans. If something comes up that doesn't fit within that overall umbrella of strategy, then the question becomes, do we change that strategic plan to accommodate some other goal that is come before the council or not? Do we keep it aside, and as we accomplish things under the overall plan, then we consider adding things to it as we check things off the box? So really this discussion and the direction that the council wants to go in for the long term falls in that planning process, and would identify much of what's been asked this evening: staffing costs, maintenance costs, replacement costs, all of those types of things, and then how that juxtaposes with the return on investment of any of those things that might be included in an overall overarching program.
Thank you. And I do recall we talked about fire protection. That was certainly a top priority, economic development, and ensuring that we are diversifying our revenue stream. We know we have a very difficult timetable coming up with regards to that. Public safety was very important. And so those are just, our public works as far as paving and things of that nature have been a very high priority, as discussed by this council in several different forums. And so thank you very much. I also just wanted to point out the fact that we do have the solar array that exists at the wastewater treatment plant. It was established in 2010, and that, just to reiterate to the council that if we were to pursue solar there, we would also have to pursue the purchasing of that equipment that's already there. So it's a much higher costing item, a number that we don't specifically have, but it's not just a matter of an application there. So there's a much larger discussion that would need to be had at that point in time that staff have not had with the current equipment owner. I know that the committee has had discussions, but staff have not. Okay, those were the only 2 questions that I had. So thank you very much. Are there any other questions from council members? Yes, Councilwoman Mara.
Thank you. So I don't know if this is for Menjel or Joan. Anybody can answer. My question is just to help clarify Councilman Berlant's questions. Isn't it advantageous to apply under the NEM 2.0 for all 7 sites? And I would like to do 8, but we're confined to the 7 sites. Do I hear you? Is that a yes?
Yes, we are confined to the 7 sites.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'm sorry. So can you answer the question though? Isn't it advantageous if we're going to apply and try and realize the savings under NEM 2.0, wouldn't it make sense to apply while we're doing it to all 7 sites rather than just pick and choose at this point in time?
That certainly is the direction we're looking for from council, whether or not you want to do all 7 or whatever the number is, or any of them.
But just for the application to PG&E, it seems to me you'd want to do all 7. I mean, is that, I just was asking for your input.
I think our city
tell you-
manager said that she is recommending 2 sites at this point in time, and certainly.
I'd
but
like her to answer.
I
if that's okay.
appreciate that, but I feel that you're leading her to something, and she's already said that she's recommending the 2 sites, police department and courtyard.
She
And
did?
so,
I didn't hear that. I'm sorry.
Since I
Yes,
work
she-
in this industry, can I just say, it makes sense if you think you're gonna do 7, otherwise you're wasting the money on the application fee. So
Well-
if you actually think you're gonna do 7 sites, then it makes sense to apply for all those 7. If you don't think you're gonna have the ability to get them done in the time frame allowed, the 3 years, then you're just wasting your money on that application.
Well, okay, so we don't know that though. So it makes sense for us to put it out there so we have this opportunity and now maybe we're just talking prematurely, but it seems to me if we can find a vendor that do all 7 sites, that gives us an opportunity to evaluate all 7 sites to see if they would be helpful in terms of reducing our costs
I'm going to
in
just
the,
stop
in the long run.
stop because I did remind Councilwoman Rodell Harris that we're going to limit our comments and our opinions until after we have public comments. So if you have specific questions, that will be entertained at this time, but I'd like to reserve all the comments on our opinions until after we've had an opportunity to hear from public comment. I did ask Councilwoman Rodell Harris to adhere to that, so I'm asking you to.
Well,
do
she gave a comment, so I was giving it.
Well, I'm just saying, no more comments, please.
Okay, so I would like to frame that and ask Mr. Dean then, since you've been dealing with the vendors and I don't want to put you on the spot, but
What is
just-
the question?
You're dealing with, you've dealt with PG&E and you've been looking for vendors. And I think you're the professional in this, you understand the process. It just seems to me, it makes sense for us to, if we can, have all 7 sites apply for the interconnect for all 7 sites so that there's that opportunity for us to evaluate at a future date whether or not we want 1 or all 7. For us to sit here tonight and try and evaluate which one is better doesn't make much sense. We don't have that information.
I'm going to say that I feel that that is really up to this council to have that discussion on whether or not we wish to pursue 1 or no sites. I don't think that it's fair to put our staff on the spot. We've already heard from our city manager, which
Wait a
sites
minute,
that she
wait a minute.
recommends.
I
But
think,
you're asking Mengel here to say whether or not he thinks it's advantageous to apply for all 7 or not. Really, the point is that this council needs to discuss whether or not it wishes to pursue that. Then we can talk about that. But I think that you're leading our public works manager into an answer that you want to receive, that we should have a discussion at the council level. So I'd like you not to answer. I with respect, and again, I would defer to our city manager, but I feel that it's unfair to ask that when this council itself needs to have that discussion.
and
it is not up to
and
this-
I
it's-
agree with you. We do need to have that discussion. And I'm trying to elicit from the professional here what his recommendation and opinion, and we've done that in every issue that comes before us. We ask for their professional opinion. I'm not the one who's dealing with PG&E, and I'm not the one who's dealing with the vendors. I would like the professional opinion. If he says 1, I'm happy to accept that.
I
But
think we've already
just
heard
would-
it's 2. We've heard the answer has been 2. That our city manager has indicated her recommendation is that we pursue the interconnectivity application for 2 sites.
So I heard, no, the only thing I heard from the city manager was that we follow 4217.
No, she
No.
did say, because Councilman Verlant asked specifically if she had a recommendation on the sites, and she
Well-
indicated,
Well, how come he could ask and I can't? Just curious.
you can ask about and she did provide that.
I would like to ask.
Well,
Mengel.
Mengel's answer is going to be the city manager's answer. Mengel is not going to have an answer that's different from the city manager.
So the hard part is with those 2 that they recommended, they already have the designs done. With the rest of them, they have to go through that process. So Menjo will need to be very involved in that process and spend a lot of time on that. It's not just the dollar amount, it's all the time and energy to develop those plans. for each
Wait,
one.
I'm not asking you a question, so again,
I'm just
I
saying
think
it's not as easy.
we have received the answer, and staff's recommendation is to pursue the 2 sites. And
Okay,
this council will
I
then,
have further questions then. I
Okay.
do have further questions.
okay,
Okay,
yes.
so which two sites then, and how did you make that determination?
That determination was made upon the processes that the city has followed previously. 3 years ago, the city requested price quotes from Capital Solar for the corporation yard and the police department. So we have that information already. The council chose to budget in the current budget year, approximately $146,000 for the corporation yard site. There is some additional work that would need to be done on the police department site. I don't believe it's significant enough to pull that out of the recommendation. So I'm basing that recommendation on the work that has previously been done and the fact that I think that those can move forward rather quickly because we already have that information.
So I think what I hear you saying then is that you don't think it's advantageous for us to pursue solar at any of the fire stations, at the police department, at the city hall parking lot? It's just those two?
I did not say that. And
Okay.
I think that
Then
that
clarify.
again is a discussion for the city council to make the determination and give direction to staff on those other 5 sites. I should say all 7 sites. We already have information, as I just indicated, on the 2. So if there is interest from the council as a majority of the council in moving forward, those 2 make the most sense at a staff level to pursue. The other 5 sites are open for discussion by the council based upon the information that we provided to you on each of those sites on whether or not to pursue them at this point in time.
So let me ask you this. So if there is a vendor out there that would do the interconnect at all 7 sites under a single contract, and then they would give us an analysis of the sites, of all 7 sites, as to the cost savings we would receive, should we move forward? And that would come at a later time. Would that be something that you think would be appropriate for the city to look at?
The staff is going to follow whatever direction that the council gives to us.
Okay.
We're asking, and at the direction from the January 23rd council meeting, for the council to have a discussion on those sites, make a determination based upon the information we provided, which ones make sense to pursue at this point in time. We will follow whatever direction that is that we're given.
Okay, any other questions for staff from the council? Councilman Berlant? Okay. All right, I'd like to open this item up for public comment. So please, if you have a comment, I'd like you to please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Indicate your name for the purposes of the record.
The timer will be shown on the big screen. for
Okay,
anybody who-
thank you very much.
Hi, Glenn Kramer, Secretary, Sustainability Advisory Committee. Thanks for considering this item tonight. There was one comment made about the sustainability had talked with the PPA for the wastewater treatment plant. That is incorrect. It has gone through staff. We did not ever directly talk with anyone. That's not our place.
Okay, then I stand corrected. I thought that I read through the documentation that you were trying to get a hold of them to get the information about the sale. So if I misread something, I apologize if I misstated something, but
We were trying to get it from staff.
Oh.
Who then got it from the vendor.
thank you.
So what we're recommending tonight is, well, the first one, when we talked about the recommendation B, those bullet points were meant not to have you select any vendor tonight, but they were meant to be contained in an agreement that would be negotiated during the time that the city did the public hearing or did the public notice under section 4217. So just to be clear, we're not asking you to award anything to Centrica tonight. The second thing is we're recommending that you go ahead and do the applications only for the interconnect work, not for going ahead with solar. We like it. We'd be delighted if you did that. But just the interconnect work to preserve the NEM2 benefits that are going to be expiring. I have Centrica here. They indicated that it takes about 1 day of work to do that. They don't have to do detailed design. They do preliminary design. So any solar vendor would probably have a minimal cost to answer Councilmember Berland's cost, in addition to the $800. Now, we are also aware that at the wastewater treatment plant, because it's a large installation, that would be a significantly greater expense. But I hope that helps you evaluate what the approximate cost is for that. So we encourage you to include all 7 sites. Also, Councilman member Holmes brought up a couple other sites. We were concentrating on the sites that had load because NEM2 applies to load-bearing accounts. So there isn't a significant amount of load at either the parking lot. The Auburn, it's my understanding the Aviation Association had also said, why don't you just blanket the taxiways? And that would, can I have a little more?
I'll give you just 30 seconds because we had a conversation. So let's just give him an additional 30 seconds, please.
Okay. You don't get the same benefits when you blanket parking lots that have no load. It's different with Sierra College because they tie it all together with the buildings. I hope that answers your question, and we'd encourage you to do all 7 sites. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Any additional public comment at this time?
Hi, council members. My name is Paul Aronowitz. I'm a resident of Auburn and a business person in Auburn. And I am also a partner in approximately 160,000 square feet of office space in Auburn, all of which has solar. And I can tell you that the actual process of doing it generally falls upon the contractor who does the application. So I'd envision the staff would have very little time involved in it since they actually do most of the processing. It also seems to me that and I read through the whole staff report, and it seems to me that all the council is approving today is the authorization of the staff to go ahead with preparing the application without committing to actually doing the work necessarily. And that the second part is just picking the method of selecting the contractor. So given the time frame and given the potential change in the rates, it seems to me to be fiscally irresponsible for this council not to make both approvals. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional public comment at this time?
My name is Shandon Schmeisky, and I am an Auburn property owner. First, I would like to thank Glenn Kramer, who has spent the last 2 years striving to transform Auburn into an energy sustainable community. We need to act now, being that the cutoff date for net energy metering 2 will end on April 13th. Both Placer County and Auburn Recreation District have solar. As of September 2019, the Placer County solar system and upgrades provide 85% of their municipal energy needs. They have a 20-year agreement to save $5 million in energy costs. ARD's solar project was created and installed by Centrica. The value of service is $2 million. The duration of service from 2020 to 2022 has an annual savings of 95,400 in gas and electric and 15,700 savings in water. Why shouldn't the city of Auburn also benefit financially and environmentally? I know you're not, I have read one of the vendors' preliminary proposal and found that they are very well organized and knowledgeable. They concluded that 942 tons greenhouse gases can be reduced each year that we have their system and upgrades in operation. The vendor, the solar vendor, will transform our existing malfunctioning solar array so that it will work more efficiently. The vendor will also save the Auburn taxpayers over $7.5 million in a period of 20 years. Another plus, Centrica is local. They are located in Rockland. I took the Imagine Auburn survey presented by Genevieve Marsh, and I heard some of the results from that survey. Most of our Auburn community residents stated that they would like to imagine Auburn as a sustainable community.
Thank you. You must have had a sneak peek at those results because your council hasn't seen those yet from that survey.
My name is David Schmeisky. Shannon and I have lived here for 45 years. And I've built numerous solar projects for others, mostly water heaters and pool heaters, radiant slabs. But we've built 2 solar homes for our family. And Shannon and I did this because we knew it was important. It's the right thing to do. Fortunately, we're not alone in that focus. Numerous other people, corporations, and governments participated in similar efforts. And we were encouraged to invest in such energy-saving technologies by both the state and federal governments. They both provided tax credits to help lower our costs. That was a benefit for all of us. Even utilities like PG&E offered incentives through cost savings. Currently, we pay no utility bill because we generate more power, more electricity than we use. Perhaps Auburn could do the same, or at least make an effort. Some people believe that climate change is a political issue. It isn't, and it's science. Humanity is doing this to our planet, and we feel it, we see it every day. You may believe what you want, but your beliefs will not reduce the concentration of CO2 in our atmosphere. To do that, you must take action. And we've taken action, citizens do that. And the reason why we're able to do that is because governments and utilities have been helpful. They've been encouraging us to do that because it's the right thing to do. We're asking you to do the same thing. You're citizens too, and you are representatives. Do the right thing. Should be easy.
Thank you very much. You need some assistance with the mic or? Okay. All right. I know this young lady.
Hello, City Council. My name is Sue Engel. I'm a resident of Auburn for the last 40 years. And I would like to say that on April 13th, we have a deadline. And it's a set deadline. We don't get extensions. We don't get to lollygag around. This is a really important deadline in order to meet this rebate. And this rebate is, my roommate was reading today, it's for 20 years. So we don't know what's in store for the future. And if we do not act now and we do not jump on this, we might not ever have another opportunity. And I'll say this because I've worn many hats in my career. And one of them was I was an energy auditor for PG&E in the residential section in Auburn when I first moved here in the 80s. And I also did energy audits for SMUD. And one of the things I learned right off the bat when I got laid off by PG&E was as soon as the CPUC says, you utility companies, you have satisfied your need in order to show conservation so you can raise your rates. And guess what? I just opened my energy bill this week, and guess what? There's a notice in your bill from PG&E that says we're going to raise your rates. Of course they are, because they're cutting off the solar rebates. So we need to act on this right now. So when you say that there's no real environmental incentive to put solar on, I beg to differ about that, because I look at rolling blackouts and I look at what we're demanding of our power grid. We don't have enough power. So we need to continue to put that power in and to use less, because we don't have enough for all of these housing developments that the county and the city have okayed in this area. So I think that we need to act responsibly. We need to think ahead. We need to take every 7 of those sites, maybe the one that isn't inhabited, but we need to apply right now. We have a window, and this is the time to do it. So please act now. Thank you. Thank you.
City Council. Glad to be here. I'm Shirley Ballinger. I live in the city of Auburn. It occurred to me that this analysis that was done of the big plan was done like 3 years ago, and that was before the CPUC put on this deadline for us to get our solar. And as you pointed out, that the city is on Pioneer's Green 100. Green 100 is not, it's maybe all renewable, but it is not clean necessarily, because biomass is not a clean energy source. By putting solar, it's the right thing to do. And I hope that you can find your way to get it through before the deadline. Thank you.
If there are additional folks that want to speak, I would invite you to come and sit in the front row. That way we can just kind of expedite that process a little bit. So if there's any additional folks that'd like to speak, please come up and sit in the front row. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I kind of do, just so we can. Yes, please come forward, and please go ahead and state your name for the record. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Linda Franklin. I live in Auburn, and I am the founder of an interfaith nonpartisan group called Placer Earth Care Action. We are we have 6 churches who are working on climate chaos issues. And in my role as one of the chief members, but we have 6 members. I'm only one. Doesn't matter that I founded it. We've got great people working. So I listened to a webinar which was called Solar for California Houses of Worship, and it was put on by an organization in San Francisco who are doing solar, trying to get in general, and now they are particularly trying to get under the window of the April 13th deadline. So I learned something about the process, which is, as you are being told, a very short timeline that we have to actually give ourselves the opportunity to choose solar. one of the former speakers pointed out that if you go ahead and begin the process, it does not mean that you must accept a contract. It might be very disappointing to the people who present the contract. It may be a lot of wasted time on their parts. However, the city does not have to accept the contract, and in the amount of time that you are putting out a request for people to do that, you can look more into it. But if you don't begin the process, it is really difficult for me to imagine how you're going to achieve getting in under the timeline, because I know at the other company that put out the information said we had to submit the last 12 months of utilization. We had to submit it by February 24th. Today is the 15th, so they would have said 9 days. So if you get going now, I would hope that you could do that. But I would say putting this off until another meeting to think about it probably will completely compromise any chance to get started, and then figure out if you really want to pursue it. And by the way, I know that this is county and it's our city and it's obviously governmental. So I don't know about all the funding, but one of my sons also sells solar, and he told me that it is possible to get into it with no money down as an individual, at least. And the group Revolve that is doing this is offering solar churches to get in with no money down. So there's a lot of ways to finance that should be looked at. A lot of creative financing, a lot of tax credits. I don't know what all those are, if any, for the government, but it should be looked into. There could be a lot of advantages. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your comments. Any additional public comment? Madam Clerk, is there any online public comment?
There is not.
None. Okay. All right. I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. And I'm actually, unless there's objection, I'd like to just have a 3-minute recess to use facilities. Is there any objection? Great. Okay, thank you. So we're just going to recess for 3 minutes. It is, so at 7:30 we'll come back, or 5 minutes. We'll do 5 minutes. I don't want to.
Yeah.
5 minutes. See how it goes. Is Councilman Brilliant on?
Y'all ready for this? All right.
Thank you very much. Thank you for allowing us to have that brief remission. We're now going to bring this item back for discussion by the council. We have concluded with public comment. And so I'd like to open it up for comments by the council at this time. Comments? Council members, who would like to begin?
I'll proceed.
Well,
Or did you? Please.
go ahead.
Okay, so in my mind, this is just a very simple ask here. This is what we're talking about really is just an opportunity to save thousands, millions of dollars. We've been looking at every strategic plan. Our number one goal is in the future, we're going to need revenue. Nella Oil is going to sunset. We need to find ways to save money. This is our opportunity. We have to be forward thinking, and this is an opportunity to be forward thinking. This is an opportunity to say thank you to the Sustainability Committee for their hard work in bringing this to our attention, and for the people that care and the people that came forward. This is our opportunity for Menjel, who's worked so hard with the group, for staff who's worked hard. So we want to work together to get this accomplished. We have an opportunity here. And the only thing we're asking is to preserve our options. Preserve our options. That's all we're asking. We want our city to have options. And as Paul Aronowitz said, so smartly said, fiscally irresponsible if we don't move forward. And I agree with that. So it's just not hard. So I would be happy to make a motion when we're ready. If there's no more comments, I'll make a motion, but it's a very simple ask here. So that's all I have to say.
I was going to say, I did have one quick question. I apologize, but I did want to just confirm with staff that when we submit the applications to PG&E, there is an application form that's required, but the drawings must be final, correct? They're not preliminary drawings, they're final drawings so that we're ready to go. Is that correct?
That's correct. In order for PG&E to make a determination whether they approve the project or not, they have to have a final plan.
Okay, so I just want to make that for the record that these have to be final drawings, not just preliminary drawings.
And if you change them, then you go back to 3.0. So if you decided to add 2 more panels after it's already been approved, then you would go to 3.0
You mean
afterwards.
2.0? Oh, yes, you go.
You
to
would move
3.0.
from 2.0 to 3.0 if you make any adjustments after that final application's been approved.
So thank you very much for that clarification. Okay, good, thank you. I know we're all going to have an opportunity to comment. As mayor, I will comment last. So I would like to, who would like to comment next? Yes.
Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Well,
Councilman Holmes.
yes, well, I have been in favor of moving forward on a solar photovoltaic system for the city of Auburn for some time. And I look at what the county has done at their facilities in out at DeWitt and down in Rockland and at Roseville and so forth. And I guess I'm a bit disappointed that we did not go out with a request for proposals. We did go out for a request for qualifications, which is different. And so I'm not sure. I'd still like to be able to go out for proposals that would be advertised and get more people possibly to respond to our request for proposals. So anyway, I'm in favor of moving forward today with what we can do and see where it goes from there.
Thank you, man. Thank you, Councilwoman Riddell Harris.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is kind of a weird thing for me because I have worked in energy efficiency and solar for the last 15 years, and I've been working very hard to get solar and energy efficiency done on, I've worked on millions and millions of dollars of projects in this. And so for me, I'm looking at this from what are we trying to achieve as a city, and does this get us to where we need to be? And is this the top priority over all the other things that we have to do? So when I'm looking at this, the real issue at hand for me is prioritization. I think solar is great. I think trying to make sure we're saving money by using solar is a great idea. I've looked at all the cost effectiveness numbers. You will definitely save some money by having solar. But the real question is this the best way to use our resources? Because when you're looking at, the city has tons of good projects that people recommend all the time. Very rarely do we get a bad project that's a bad idea. It's just a question of, can we do it now, or does it need to wait for later because there are other things that are higher priorities? So when you look at things, you look at basically 4 criteria. Does it reduce costs? Does it improve the level of service or the community benefit? Does it reduce risk or increase compliance? And does it increase revenue? So you're trying to balance those things and trying to figure out what's the best item to do. There's always an opportunity cost of doing something or not doing something in a city. And so the question is, do we need to prioritize this cost savings over the other things like economic development, paving of roads? We only have so much staff time. So I know that we have a third party, but there is a certain amount of staff time that's required. I work in a city. Having a third party do stuff, you still have to use staff time to manage that process. And so is that what we want to spend our staff time doing versus the other very important things for the city? And so that's really the question. For me, I don't feel like it's an all or nothing thing. I feel like anything else, you can do things incrementally. 3.0 was really designed not necessarily to make it so there wouldn't be solar anymore, but to make it so it's more cost effective and encourages more batteries. If we put in solar with appropriate batteries later on, it's just as cost effective to put in solar in 3.0 as it is in 2.0. It's just making sure we have that storage so that way we're not using the grid as a battery. Right now, the grid is being used as a battery, and the non-solar customers are subsidizing the solar customers. And so that the 3.0 really just changes that. So if at a later date we decide to put solar in, we would just make sure we get batteries put in as well, and we would still get that energy savings that we're looking for. So just because we decide not to do something right this second doesn't mean that opportunity for that energy savings and that cost savings is gone. We would just need to do it in a slightly different way. And the great thing is that in a couple of years, we're going to be required to put electric vehicles throughout the whole city. And that's what I do every day for the city of Roseville, is work on EV stuff. And all of those vehicles are going to be a battery. So we're going to use those vehicles as batteries for the courtyard and for police all day long. So there's a lot of the grid is changing, how we're using power is changing. So there's lots of opportunities, and things will be different probably 6 months from now than they are today. So given all of that fun that I just said, I know you guys are asking. So what I think that we should do is, I don't think that we should just do I don't think that we should just get an interconnection for the courtyard and police. I think we should move forward. I think we should get solar on those two. We have designs. I think we should move forward. I think we should get a qualified contractor list and do that process, because I think that we should make it open. There's lots of local solar contractors that I know would love to be able to be part of that list. And I think it's appropriate for us to make that available for them. So I think that's appropriate. I think that Fire Station 2 and 3 in City Hall are question marks for me onto whether those, because they have roofing issues, ADA compliance issues, and some leaky roof and other things going on at some of those buildings. I think it's worth us taking the time to look at those. So maybe those 3 we get just the interconnection on, and we can, over the next year or so, look at all the details to see whether it makes financial sense and whether we have the time to prioritize that into our work schedule. And then for me, Fire Station 1 that's not occupied, let's figure out how to reduce the energy on that. We shouldn't be spending that much money on a building that nobody's in right now. I'd rather not pay to put solar on to compensate for our lack of energy efficiency and lack of managing a building. So that one doesn't make any sense for me personally to put solar on right now. And then the wastewater treatment plant is a very big, very cumbersome project, and there's a lot going on out there right now. And it's a PPA anyway, unless we decide to buy it for over $1 million, which is a whole nother thing. So I think that that's kind of a bigger monster than we're prepared to deal with right now. And so I don't think that if we want to do more of the PPA later, once we figure that out, I think that's a reasonable thing, but there would be a lot of work to converting it over so it's not a PPA. And there are a lot of things in economic development that I would really like to get done and get a general plan that's up to date and other types and a strategic plan. So I'd like to spend our staff time on that versus trying to really make a huge project at the wastewater treatment plant. So that's where I stand.
Thank you very much. Councilman Berlant.
Yeah, I actually really appreciate going after Councilwoman Riddell Harris because I completely agree with what she said, and I think she articulated it well. I think the idea of saving money, of course, is a no-brainer, but I don't see it as that simple. Back to the interconnection costs, the $800 times 7 is not that large of an investment, but it's that unknown cost of the plans that worries me. And the idea that we only know how much that will be if we agree to a vendor to actually do the work doesn't allow us to just simply submit an application and then make a decision whether we want to move forward, because we are committed to that. I agree with Councilmember Holmes. We have to have formal requests for proposals so that we have bid this correctly. I've read all the documentation, done some research as well to really understand, is this exempt from the bidding process? Is it not? But I heard very clear from our legal counsel that his guidance is it needs to go out to bid. And so I think we really need to do that. The discussion about the strategic plan, I very much understand that our former city manager is no longer here, but he did spend the time to put together a strategic plan. And yes, we may change that in 2023, but in reviewing that plan, it does mention solar, but specifically only maximizing solar out at our wastewater treatment plant. And so, to me, I think this is definitely something worthy of discussion. But I think, as Councilwoman Riddell Harris said, there are a whole list of things that are in this plan, are in our CIP and other planning documents that we have already agreed upon need to occur, cost money, and are in the front of the line. And I understand the urgency for what the PUC deadline has set, but it's again, this is not a free decision. This is a major investment. Personally, and I realize we're not making the decision tonight related to the vendor, but there's a lot more than just getting a bid to do the plans for solar and the connectivity. There's a lot of discussion in these proposals related to energy conservation, which is an additional item. There's a lot in these plans that it relates to funding sources. That brings on a whole host of other liabilities from my perspective. And so I do not feel comfortable making a rush decision, having a week to review this plan or the documents. Now, I too really have to echo Councilwoman Amara's comments. Obviously, Glenn, the Sustainability Advisory Committee, Councilwoman Amara, you all have spent a lot of time under this crunch to put it together. But I'm with Councilwoman Riddell Harris. I think the first two are a go for me. I am a question mark in those others. And again, the bigger question mark is not the validity of the need, but it's really just based on that unknown of the cost. So that's kind of where I sit at the moment. But I do appreciate the discussion tonight. It's been a little interesting to be virtual in this little bit of a tennis match discussion today, but really do appreciate the passion that people have brought to the discussion. So that's all the comments that I have. Appreciate that, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilman Berlant. And I would like to say that I do echo the comments of both Councilman Berlant and Councilwoman Riddell Harris on this with regards to the two sites. Well, really, in my opinion, I think really the Courtyard is something the City Council has discussed whether or not to put solar at the Courtyard. That has been on our agenda. We've actually budgeted money to make that happen. And so we've actually had a discussion there. And so I can certainly support that. But I think that, you know, it's been said several times by the public and by council members here that we need to be fiscally responsible. And I would argue that this council is fiscally responsible. I would also argue the fact that, and I've said this in a meeting with a few of the members of the Sustainability Committee, your lens is a very narrow and specific one. And we appreciate that because that's where your expertise lies. But this council has to look at things with regards to the city with a much larger lens. Our responsibility is not just for sustainability and environmental protection, but also public safety. We have issues with our infrastructure, treating our wastewater. We have an airport, industrial park. We have many responsibilities and many taxpayers that we need to be responsible to. So we have to take a look at all of these things and look at this with a much larger lens. So I think that's important to say. And I think that being fiscally responsible is not to waste time from staff's perspective, which I know we have spent, and I do appreciate that the Sustainability Committee has put forth a tremendous amount of time on this, but staff have also, and I know this because I've been part of this discussion, hours and hours and hours on this. And so we need to be responsible, as Councilwoman Riddell Harris had mentioned, that if we go forward with all 7 sites, really there's additional staff work there, and we're having to reprioritize what it is that staff do. We've heard that the application is not, it is an application and then the final drawings. And I think that it would be irresponsible for us to pursue interconnect applications for sites that we have no interest in pursuing solar at. And so as for myself, for my vote, I am not interested in pursuing solar at the wastewater treatment plant. We have solar there. It's been there since 2010. If it's not operating at maximum capacity, then we need to fix it. But that just talks about the fact of the matter. We've got a solar array there that's been there since 2010. Our staff are so limited, they haven't even had an opportunity to make sure that it's operating properly. What are we going to do with solar on 7 different sites? I cannot even imagine what the cost is. We have to hire additional staff. We talk about all the savings that we could potentially achieve, but we haven't even talked about maintenance. And I could probably guarantee we'd have to hire more staff. That's a tremendous amount of infrastructure for the city. And so I'm not interested in pursuing solar at all those sites, and I'm not interested in pursuing the interconnectivity applications for those sites. I only want to pursue the application where I think we're going to put solar. And this council has discussed, as I mentioned, that courtyard. And so I would support moving forward with that. And I would actually agree with you, Councilwoman Riddell Harris, that we shouldn't just put forth an application, but let's just go ahead and move forward with solar there. I say that because, again, we talk about being fiscally responsible in NEM 3.0. We know that the reason for NEM 3.0 is because the CPUC is trying to stimulate the market for storage. Okay, if we talk about sustainability, we talk about doing what's right for the grid and building resilience, storage has got to be part of this conversation. And it hasn't been because it's very expensive. I appreciate that. Having solar at the courtyard, effective 2025, we're going to have to start having EV vehicles. And so those EV vehicles, those charging stations do start to work in a storage capacity. And so we do benefit from that. And I think that if we choose at a later date to pursue solar at other sites, then storage has to be part of that. Because again, we don't enter into solar for the strict purpose of making money, of selling power. That's not why we do it. You do it so that you can generate power and hopefully use it. And that's why solar and storage to me really makes the most sense, but it's it's not economical really. So I think the other thing is that we do need to ensure that the city is following the process that we've established in our municipal code with regards to requests for proposals, that when we talk about anything of this magnitude, that we need to follow those, and we need to follow the rules that we've established for ourselves. We're not exempt from that. I do agree. I agree with staff's recommendation that if we do pursue the interconnect applications, that we do so under 4217. That does not preclude us from soliciting additional bids. In fact, it says that we may do that. And there's actually a clearinghouse that is for additional vendors if we need them. and Pioneer Community Energy is also offered to help us if we need to have additional vendors. But I agree with Councilman Holmes, Councilman Berlant, and Councilwoman Riddell Harris that we need to open this up and get some additional bids in here. That does not preclude any of the vendors that have put forth information from participating in that process. I would certainly encourage them to do that, but I think that we do need to follow our own rules. And I am fine with going again under that section 4217. So, again, I think that we should pursue solar at the courtyard. The PD it's a much larger ticket. I think that there was an estimate for $387,000. It's a little bit higher. We'd have to talk about where we'd get the funding for that. And I think, that could be another discussion. I know that Councilwoman and I have talked about potentially using some of the ARPA monies that were earmarked for broadband, that we haven't done anything there. So that's the conversation that we could have at a subsequent meeting.
There's also, as far as I understand it, about 60% of the solar at PD is on the roof. And then there was another 40% that would be from some kind of shade structure or something overhang.
Excuse me, it would be if there was a solar canopy in the parking lot.
So a possible option to reduce the cost of the PD if we wanted to fit it so it all fit in underneath that ARPA funding that's available, we could possibly just do the rooftop solar at PD, and that would be a more that would fit us into that cost effective area.
Okay, so just pursuing for the rooftop, and that would help to cut that cost.
I'd rather do rooftop under 2.0 on PD and cover that cost than do none at all. If we want to make sure that we want to use the funds that we have available and not go into debt for doing these, I think that that's an efficient way of doing it.
I think that's also another point is that I'm not, we haven't discussed the finances of this and what we do. We did talk about, again, we've allocated monies in the budget for solar at the courtyard. I think we do have a possibility to utilize some of those other monies as well, but I do want to make sure it's a cost effective effort. So I would probably be okay with that. So, again, so with that, we have staff's recommendation. At this point, I just want to restate the staff's recommendation, which is to move forward with the solar application, interconnect applications for the courtyard and the police station, utilizing section 4217, as well as complying with the provisions of the municipal code as applicable. That is what their recommendations. I've heard multiple suggestions here on which sites to use. So
we're still in discussion.
We're still in discussion. And so I just wanted to reiterate that. So is there additional?
I have a process question, probably for Gary. Is it possible for us to break this up and make an agreement on 2 sites and then deal with the remainder on how we want to do it? Or do we have to make one decision with all 7 sites together? Because it sounds like we might have agreement on 2 of them to start out with, and it would be nice to, at least we can make some progress versus having to do one big thing with all of them together.
Yes, you can proceed with only 2.
No, I'm just saying, could we proceed with the 2 and then make a
You won't
decision?
fall
on
under
them?
2.0.
Huh?
You won't fall under the 2.0.
No, what I'm saying is, if we have agreement, say we have agreement on police and courtyard, we can make that agreement. And then we could talk about the remaining 5 and kind of how we want to handle those. I didn't know if that would be.
Yes.
It's a lot. 7 is a lot to manage. So I'm just trying to break it up a little bit. So it's
Yes.
easier.
So I think the question is, can you provide 2 different pieces of direction to staff as to different sites? The answer is yes.
Okay.
It would just need to be in 2 different motions.
Yeah. Okay. So, I know Alice isn't necessarily comfortable with PD, maybe not, but seems like everyone else is on board with doing solar on PD. Is that,
Wait, are we deciding solar tonight? I thought we were deciding just.
Well, it'd be nice to just move forward if we know we're going to do it
No,
on
we
those
can't
different-
do that. It's not on the agenda. Isn't that correct?
So yeah, the direction this evening is for the interconnection and the process to use for that. So if the direction is go forward with that and to use 4217.10 and following, proposals will come out of that process naturally and would come back to you at a future agenda item. And the scope of that future agenda item and the contract awarded will depend on the scope of that proposals that come out of that process.
So just to
the question
clarify-
is, why can't you do it for all 7?
I just want to clarify from our attorney, because I think what you're saying is, I think Councilwoman Riddell Harris is asking whether or not the city council can say that it'd like to move forward with the solar installation at a site or multiple sites, or if we're restricted solely in the application itself.
At this point, because of this agenda title, it's about the interconnectivity applications on your agenda title for 2. If you proceed under those sections, though, any of the 3 that are in the staff report, you would necessarily be receiving information that would then come back to you to act on.
Okay. But it's not, again, the council can only decide whether or not it wants to pursue the interconnect application. That would go out for bid, and then we would discuss whether or not we want to award the contract to said bidder. But
Bid would include the whole project. Because it's a single contract.
Well-
Well, this is direction from the council, so staff needs this direction in part. So if the direction is to go contract for a contractor to submit these applications, then that is the direction that staff would carry out.
So it's possible for us to go to ask you or ask staff to pursue the solar and the bids for 2 projects, but maybe just pursue the interconnection on a couple other ones.
I don't think so. I think if I understand this correctly, the only action that we can take is with regards to the application itself. So we can't, is that,
What I'm saying is there's 2 scopes of work. There's a scope of work where someone does the interconnection and all the solar, and that's 1 bid. And then there's a scope of work for just doing the interconnection where we don't know if we're gonna do the solar or not. And so there might be 2 different, like, if we knew ahead of time that we wanted a bid all the way through for solar, it would speed up the process and we could just move forward with that agreement versus just doing the interconnection if we wanted to. So that's all I was saying.
so can we do that?
So trying to understand that process a little clearer here. So
Well, I'm gonna go to contractor and I say, I want a bid for what it would take to do the interconnection plus the solar all together in 1 piece. Then that's a different bid than I want you to tell me how much it would cost for you to go through the interconnection process, and that's it.
And Menjo might be able to add into this. My sense is the information received will include more than just the interconnection, because that's the information that staff has already received when it solicited this information.
Okay.
And then an award of contract would necessarily come back at a future meeting.
But we would only pay for the interconnection costs up front because we may not proceed with the solar.
Right, if that's so that'll depend on the contract that's awarded.
Crap.
Yes,
That's where I'm messed up because normally it's included, but if we decide just to do the interconnection scope and not to move forward, then it would be different.
I think,
and if that was the direction given to only proceed with that piece, then that would be the limited scope of what was solicited under any process and brought back to you.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying. We need to decide that now because we need to figure out what scope we want brought back.
Well, in the direction, you go ahead, Mayor.
I was just going to say that we can decide if we're going to use section 4217 for the purposes of soliciting bids for the solar interconnect application. Those bids could include the cost of actually installing the solar.
But we need it broken out from the cost of the interconnection.
We could ask that in the RFQ if they could just break that out, but the bid could include the installation of solar. Is that correct?
Yes, and staff would be developing the scope of that proposal when it was released.
Okay, so that would have to be in the scope that when we request the bids or the request for proposals, that they incorporate the cost of the application and then the entire project. And then once that comes back to the city council, we can determine, which vendor we're going to use and move forward.
Mhm.
Okay.
So Councilman Harris, I just don't understand why then, if we're going to just ask someone to do the process, why don't we just do all 7?
Because I don't want it at 2 of them. It doesn't make sense. So I don't want to put.
To you in your mind, but maybe a professional vendor would have a different
No, I've
outlook.
looked at what the professional vendors say and it still doesn't really make sense.
You looked at the vendor that was,
I looked at the scope of work that we've already been given. I have worked in solar for 15 years. I know what makes sense on sites and what doesn't. I've actually taken classes on doing site assessments. I used to inspect solar systems. I'm well versed in this and I know what
So-
makes cost effective sense and what I don't think labor wise, I'm willing to prioritize over our other projects and which is more labor
so,
intensive.
so basically, but you're saying labor wise means staff time?
Yeah, I just don't think we have the staff time to do the more involved projects right now because I'm not willing to prioritize them over like a general plan that we need to update and other key projects like paving roads and things like that. But I'm up for looking at.
So can we make that decision after they come back? Can we say, I mean, for the interconnect for staff time is almost irrelevant. It's after you're saying that will be critical, right?
Well,
Isn't
and
that right?
even for developing what the interconnection documents are would take time from our staff. So I don't want to waste it on.
Okay, so
Especially
basically
for, like,
what I
the
hear you saying is that you want to not do away with this opportunity because you think staff time within the next 2 weeks is so impacted that we are going to give up this opportunity. So you're basically relying on that.
Joan, sorry, that was a little loud. What have you not worked on over the last 2 weeks because you've been working on this?
Well, wait a minute now.
just
I'm not talking about this. This
Okay,
is,
I'd like,
this-
okay,
no, this is
order, I'm gonna
discussion.
say, yes,
This
it is, but
discussion.
all
And
comments
me
really
too.
should
I'm
be-
saying we're
all
putting a lot of time and energy into this.
comments
process.
should be coming through the mayor, please. And I understand we're having a conversation, but we need to.
I'm
So
talking
here's-
about the opportunity cost of doing really complex projects for solar versus the other things that we already had prioritized.
But I'm just talking about the interconnect, that's the staff time. I'm not talking about
If I
the
can-
agenda item. I agree. This was a travesty that to get this on and
The way it
the
went, the way
staff
this all
time-
happened was very.
the way it
very
happened
labor-
was just really,
We can talk about
bad.
that all night,
but
Councilwoman, all
so
night
that
about
has
the
nothing
process
to-
and how this
that-
came to the council.
so that has nothing to do with the time it's going to take within the next couple of weeks to get a third-party vendor to do the interconnect. That's all I'm saying. That's all, that's the
And
only ask.
if I can just add one piece to this to clarify a statement that I made a little bit earlier. In soliciting proposals to do the interconnectivity, the responses are going to include the other work. I think that's very likely because that's the responses that staff has already received and that you see here and for other agenda items. So this distinction, your agenda item is talking about interconnectivity, and that's partly because that was the specific direction given from the council at the last meeting and how that agenda title came from that direction. But my understanding from staff and those who are in this industry, I'm seeing lots of heads nodding, is that when you solicit the application, the process for submitting that, it will include the other work. And then it would be properly agendized at a future meeting for a piece or more of that and at a properly noticed meeting following the procedures you all choose.
And I
Then we
agree
can
with that.
decide.
I agree with that. However, in a normal solar process, they don't break out the interconnection. So if we decided not to proceed and we just wanted to do the interconnection, that's not how solar normally works. Normally you sign the contract before they do the interconnection work for the entire solar project.
But we can't find someone that'll just do that.
We don't know that because we haven't actually done that work because that wasn't directed of staff. But
So if we can't find someone, then we're deciding right now whether we're doing solar or not. Because we're soliciting that,
The full
thing.
proposal, yes.
we're not trying to just do interconnection.
But you can make a decision and I'm not trying to be rude here, Mayor, Madam Mayor, but we can make a decision once it comes back.
I agree,
Okay.
but it is not labor-free on staff part to develop that plan and what we want it to look like and to get all the details that they need in order to give an actual estimate. So there is work on the staff side to give the third.
There's some work, but mostly it's been done because we've already have two and we can solicit more.
Not
but-
on the wastewater treatment plant. And so we need to, that's. a big
yes,
one.
and I would also just like to say that, each council member is entitled to his or her own opinion. And, as far as I'm concerned, I am not interested in pursuing solar at all 7 sites. I am not interested in pursuing the application because it's a waste of time. If for myself, for my own vote, I'm not interested in pursuing that. So I don't want to take staff's time or our vendor's time to put together that information. I think that much solar infrastructure for the city of Auburn is a tremendous amount. You know, it's really interesting. I am on the League of Cities Board of Directors, and I actually asked my colleagues for the Sacramento Valley Division, how many of you are jumping the gun here because of NEM 3.0? And not one of them raised their hand. Now, the city of Auburn is its own entity and we are our own council. But I just want to say that, you know, this really has been brought to the council. It has been presented to us as an emergency kind of a situation when it really is not. And we've talked about the fact that if you have storage, you can still get the same benefit as NEM 0.2 at some point. But I am willing to move forward, and I will say, when I came in here, I'm thinking that I want to just move with Courtyard. I am willing to solicit for my vote is willing to solicit a bid for Courtyard and PD. And that's where I am. I am not interested in hearing somebody's thoughts on the other sites because I'm not interested in pursuing solar there based on all the research that I've done. And I've done a lot. Glenn knows I read my material. And I've talked to a lot of experts in this area, and I'm just not interested in pursuing that. And I don't want to waste time. So that's where I am. I just wanted to because there's been lots of discussion coming this way. So I just wanted to let folks know that's where I am.
Most cities are further ahead of us with solar. Most have already installed some, and we haven't really done that yet.
Yeah,
So
we just had the one.
Yeah.
Madam Mayor, can I ask a procedural follow-up question based on this discussion? Obviously, the agenda item and what we're being asked to do is to approve and move forward or give direction, at least to submit for an interconnectivity application. But then what I've heard in this latest round of comments is about we're going to have to go out for bid. And so, and Gary, maybe you can, because I think you're the one who was talking about this. Am I on the right assumption that we have the ability to put a portion or all 7 out for a request for proposal and then make the actual decision which applications or locations we submit to? Because those are two very different things. Are we making a decision tonight on just the application, or are we first putting it out for proposal and thus then have the ability to scale tonight as we choose to?
It's the latter. You could go out and seek proposals, and it would necessarily come back at a future time to approve a contract. And at that point, you could choose not to proceed with any or all.
Okay, thank you, Gary. And so, just kind of hearing from Councilwoman Amara and then Madam Mayor, what you just had to say, I would entertain at least the idea that we would give direction to staff to request proposals for 2 or whatever number we agree upon, and then all 7, because to me, while your words, Madam Mayor, was it may be a waste of our consultants' time, at least from my perspective, as one individual, I'd be better informed of what those full costs for design would be and what the commitment would look like in a true qualified bid, not just the items we're going to look at in the next round. And so I myself would be okay if somebody, and I can do it, made a motion to request the 2 locations as well as all 7 locations packaged in those 2 different areas, to then allow this council to discuss, which ones we actually move forward on.
Okay, then I would like to make a motion.
Thank you very much, Councilman Berlin. I appreciate that. What I would encourage this council to do is that I think that it would be beneficial if we have 2 motions. So if there would be a motion to pursue solar application interconnect for PD and the Courtyard, and then if there's another motion to pursue the interconnect application for the other 5 or 4 or whatever number of sites there are, so that we can bifurcate this. I think that would be the most advantageous. And you'd be able to have your vote.
But Madam Mayor, I apologize, but I just want to be clear. I am not, was not recommending that we make a motion to do a interconnection application for all 7. I was saying that we move forward with a request for a proposal for all 7 and then make a decision as a council whether or not we submitted interconnectivity applications for those additional 5 or so locations.
Can I ask a quick question of Menjel? How much since you've already done some estimates on some sites, how much time do you think it would be on your part to do like the wastewater treatment plant and the one out here? Those are the 2 that it seem like they're the hardest, is the wastewater treatment plant and here maybe? What is that like a day? Is that like more than that? I know it, but you've already done it for a couple sites. So I'm just trying to figure out if it's gonna take a lot of time away for us to do some sites that we don't really know if we want to do or not.
So I cannot hear you since you're sitting back there. I apologize, but I know other people watching at home can't either.
I apologize for that. The wastewater treatment plant would be far more complex. As mentioned before, there's a PPA out there that we would have to determine what that looks like for the buyout. We can't just add to that because it's not currently our system. So having a vendor add to what's out there isn't really realistic. We'd have to buy that contract out and then decide if we want to fix what's out there or completely remove and replace. So
it's a significant level of effort for the,
that is not a day's work.
the other 6, are they less work for you to work with a consultant on, or are there any other ones that you're concerned about that would take a significant amount of your time if we got bids on them?
The other 6 would be more manageable. I still have my concerns about the city hall because of the ADA requirements, but if you were to ask me, could it be done? Certainly.
Okay. Thank you.
Menjel, I have a question on that. So on the wastewater treatment plant, you're saying that it would be a lot of staff time to look into, to have a third party do the interconnect? I'm just a little confused. And proposal for contract?
Well, we don't necessarily know what the interconnect would look like without us having the system as our own. I can tell you right now, but when we're talking about purchasing that agreement from the current PPA, it would.
No, I don't mean a PPA. I mean in
We have to
terms,
purchase it from the PPA is what he's saying.
The way
the buyout.
the way
Okay.
Yeah, we'd have to
set up,
purchase
you
that
have
first.
to.
And that's not just my time. I mean, I would work expeditiously to try to make that happen, but it would be the city attorney's time because I'm not going to, that contract's beyond my area of expertise. The city manager is going to be involved. Yeah. So that one, I'm not real certain how the amount of time it would take.
So it's
There's-
mostly city, other staff is what you're saying.
Yes, so it's not just my time.
But it would be yours too, because you would probably have to go out.
Oh,
there and
absolutely.
Do work as well. Okay. I just wanted not all solar is equal. Some are much more labor intensive than others. So I just want to make sure we're mindful of that.
I just, Councilmember Lant, you had talked about pursuing an RFP for all 7 sites so that we then get the bids. Right now, we have bids for Courtyard and PD. And so what you're saying is that you would want to get all the bids for all 7 sites and then decide which applications to submit once you have all those bids. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I was, back to, do we just do 2 or do we do all? I am not tonight willing to agree to be on the 2 to move forward with giving staff the direction to start the application. What I would to somewhat, I maybe fall in the middle here, be willing to request proposals for, and maybe it's not all 7, because I think back to, what Menjel just said, maybe it's 6, but I would like to see a more informed set of financials to us of what it would take to go beyond just the 2 that we've already discussed doing, because it, unless staff can really explain to us the amount of work that it would take that is too much to prepare a scope of work to go out for a request for a proposal. To me, I think that a formal request for a proposal would help inform, and again, may not change my mind, it may not change any of your minds. I'm just saying that if the group or a subset of the group is at least willing to entertain doing a formal request for proposal beyond the first 2, I would agree upon that.
So then I just want to clarify then, as I mentioned, I think that we can bifurcate this. It sounds like, and if I'm misspeaking, please let me know, Councilman, but it sounds like just a scorecard here that we have a majority of council members that would be willing and again, please correct me if I misstate this, Councilman, that would be willing to pursue the interconnect application for the PD and the Corp Yard. And then there would be a subsequent discussion that there could be a majority of the council that would be willing to pursue going out for bid for the other sites, how many sites you decide, and then making a decision then whether or not you want to pursue the application. So again, this would be a bifurcated process that we could give direction to pursue the bids. Well, really, it's pursuing the bids for all 7, really, unless.
Because we wouldn't have time otherwise, right?
Well, the thing is that you've got the 2. I think that you have a majority vote for the 2, and then it's a discussion. So that's the thing. So Councilman, you're saying that you're good to go ahead and pursue the application, but really what we need to do is to give staff direction on which of the sites we want to pursue application for. So it would have to be the total number, not just 2, or unless it's
Well,
just.
you summarized where I am, which is I would agree upon, which I think as well, it sounds like there's a majority, that the 2 locations we move forward with a motion to direct staff to enter into, and whatever that process looks like, to begin submitting interconnectivity applications. What I was saying, I myself would be willing to entertain a request for a proposal for an additional number of them, so that we have the financials to then, not tonight, make the decision whether to give direction for any additional interconnectivity agreements.
So we we have the documentation for those 2. We start the interconnection process for those 2, and then we can still continue.
But we still have to, I think though, the problem here is that we have to provide staff with direction on which sites we wish to pursue the interconnect application. And so we can say these 2, but then what you're doing is you're potentially delaying.
Right.
It's a little more complicated, I think, Councilman Berlant.
That's okay. I mean, it can be more complicated. I'm just telling you from my portion of what I would agree upon. Would be, I'm good to move forward tonight with 2. If we want to discuss 3 to 7, then I would like to see a formal request for a proposal and a future discussion with decision to give direction.
But I just to clarify, so and this is why it's so confusing. The direction is to whether or not we're going to pursue these application. And so then we have to get the bids back for that and then determine who we're going to go with for the application. And so that's really what the end, we're not going to, we are not tonight going to vote on actually submitting the application. What we're doing is we're giving staff direction on which sites we wish to pursue the interconnectivity application for. We're not voting to actually submit that application. And I think that's where the confusion was coming with you, is that you're saying, look, we've got information here for PD and Corp Yard. You're ready to submit the application, but really then you want to have the bids from the other providers, but that's really what the direction would be for staff. And so I think.
Can I ask you a question? I don't want to be talking past each other. Just to be clear, maybe this is back to Gary. Whether we do 2 or 7, it has to go out for a request for a proposal, correct? So I guess then, just from your nodding, I can't see Gary, but I take it okay, thank you. So I guess what I would recommend
That's
then.
under 4217 though, just to clarify, that's correct, right?
4217 authorizes but does not require an RFP RFQ process. The city's municipal code requires a competitive solicitation for equipment, services, and supplies. And then for the public work component, there's a separate process too. So it's about meeting the requirements of all 3 of these.
Right. And I think that's what he's asking.
Yeah, and the way to do that is to go through a competitive process.
So, Madam Mayor, if I could just add to that. So thank you for, I was confused. So understanding that anything is going to go out for a request for a proposal we move forward with. So my recommendation to the group, and it's not a motion, it would be a recommendation of a motion, that the direction we give for the request or proposal is to ask qualified entities to bid on a 2-part bid. One is just the 2 that we agree upon, and then a bid that includes the 2 plus, for the just ease of counting right now, the other 5. And I say just for ease of counting, because maybe there's not a majority that wants the wastewater treatment plant, and that would reduce us to 6. But what I would recommend is that we go out to bid, and we do this all the time at the state, where we are giving 2 options for a bid, and then we make the decision based on the financials, which option we want to go for. Just the 2 or all 7 or a subset of that 7.
I have a quick question for Joan.
I think I do. So Councilman, I think what you're saying is that that we would pursue the request for proposal in twofold. There would be one request for proposal to combine Courtyard and PD, and then the other request for proposal would be for the other sites.
Correct.
Or all the sites put together in case we decide to do them all, but
Correct.
couldn't we break them up and just have a proposal for each one and we
Yeah,
could decide them
think,
individually?
Honestly, I think that it would just make more sense to have them.
Sure. I'm just trying to not have us let all 7 die tonight by saying, yeah, we're comfortable with 2, with more documentation and documentation that follows the correct process. No offense to the Sustainability Committee. I would be more comfortable moving potentially beyond the 2 if I actually could see a proposal that had that. So yes, if the proposal is split up into 7 different pieces, that's fine too, I would think, and maybe I'm wrong, and I would definitely defer to Councilwoman Riddell Harris on how this works. Bundling things up often brings down the cost, but if doing all 7 separately is what we do, and then we come back and then give the direction, I personally am okay with that.
I think we'd have more success with companies to bundle them up.
Our city manager wants to make a comment.
We can probably do a proposal that makes them break them down individually and we can pick and choose, or we could do them all together. So I think there's ways of doing the contract.
Yes, Joan.
So I just wanted to say that it appears to me the discussion is going toward wanting information on each of the 7 sites. It would make sense to give direction to do that. You can do that in one bid process. The RFP would specify that the city reserves the right to choose among the 7 different sites, which ones you want to pursue or none.
Can I ask Joan a question real fast? On the wastewater treatment plant, based on what Menjel said, is it possible for us within the time frame that we need to be able to figure out all the details around buying out the current one, figuring out the design and all the things we would need to do to be able to get the appropriate documentation to PG&E in time to do the interconnection? It seems like it's not.
I don't believe so.
So I don't really want to waste time on something that's not feasible. It seems, well, there's a lot.
Well,
Because we have to, we would
We'd have
need
to
to have a
negotiate.
negotiation on
I was
potentially
just gonna
purchasing
say.
the site. I mean, that's
Right.
that's a lot. So what I would recommend that we do here tonight is that we entertain 2 motions, or you can do as many as you want. But the first motion that I would recommend is that we move to direct staff to pursue an RFP, or actually, let me get the.
I can make a,
No, I want-
I'd like to make a motion.
I'm gonna finish my point here. I want to find that language. That we would, okay, so what I would recommend is that we have 2 motions. So the first one I would recommend is that we direct staff to seek the method. So the method would be under 4217 and our municipal code, vendors that would provide an estimate for solar at the courtyard and the police department. And then the second motion could be the other sites.
Okay, I will do the motion.
Okay, so the motion is, I just want to make sure that it's clear for staff, is that we are going to, this is the first motion. Yep.
Can I say the motion myself and then you can correct me if I'm wrong?
If
How's
you
that?
wish.
Okay. Excuse me. I'd like to make a motion to direct staff to submit an interconnect application to PG&E. Is that not correct?
No, we have
No?
to, we have
Okay.
to,
Okay,
Yeah, it's,
I would like to make a motion to direct staff to,
Go out for bid.
yeah,
it's really, it's really, I know.
to go,
see,
to move forward. To move forward with applications for vendors to pursue an interconnect application to PG&E for inclusion in the net energy metering NEM 2.0 program for two sites, the courtyard and the police station, utilizing government code section 4217 to secure a vendor to provide all the necessary work and to authorize staff to solicit for and enter into a contract for all related work subject to the provisions of 4217 with appropriate notice for a public hearing and to be completed by, and I think we need to set a very short date. That would be the first motion. And I do think we do need a date.
I think that we, okay, so I understand what the motion is. I will second it for the purposes of discussion.
Okay, and can I put March 13th as the date? That's our next meeting.
I don't want to have a date there because I want to make sure that staff have sufficient time to go out for bid and that to get that information and put it forward to
Well,
us.
can we say no later than March 13th? Because that would, see, April's coming and then we have to make the decision. And then for the this is for the courtyard. And then if we make our decision, then they have to submit it to PG&E. And then if there's any revisions, that only leaves us, what, 30 days?
I just want to make sure that staff have an opportunity to provide the council with all the information that we need to make an informed decision.
I understand that. So is that unrealistic?
Could we,
Staff, is that unrealistic?
Joan?
Pardon me?
could we say within an appropriate time frame?
Well,
to meet
she's
the
gonna, did you
NEM
say,
2.0
are you trying to
requirements?
answer that question?
We're looking at
Oh,
the time.
okay, sorry.
So it's possible if documents can be put together in the next 4 to 5 days and gone out to bid at that time, and then a public hearing notice is issued at least 2 weeks before.
What I would prefer to do is say as soon as possible. That gives staff the flexibility to get the job done correctly. I really don't want to put forth a specific date because I want to ensure that we're able to go out and get these bids from more than one or two providers, which I'm sure we can get multiple given the lists that we have. And we already know that there are 3 that are interested. But I want to make sure that not only do we get those, but that staff have an opportunity to evaluate them properly, because then we're going to ask them to make a recommendation, then which vendor to use. So I would prefer to say as soon as possible and not to put a date certain on that, because I don't want to jeopardize the process.
The good thing is.
But you might
that for this
jeopardize-
One, we already have a scope that's already been developed for these 2 projects, so getting out those documents should be easier than the
That's
other
right.
projects, hopefully.
Okay.
Okay. So we have a motion that's incredibly long, but I think that it is stated that that the direction is to direct staff to pursue the 4217 contract along with our municipal code for vendors to provide an application or a bid for those 2, for the courtyard and police department. So we have that on tape, luckily, Madam Clerk, so that you can go back and listen to it 20 times because it is very lengthy, but it is because it is, and that's no criticism at all.
No, I
to
know.
you at
No,
all.
I don't take it.
So appreciate that. All right.
All right.
So there is a motion and a second, and I will open up discussion on the motion. Do you have discussion, Councilman Holmes?
No, I was gonna second it, but you've already done that. Yeah, okay.
For the 2. All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Amara,
Yes.
Berlant,
Aye.
Holmes,
Aye.
Riddell Harris.
Aye.
And Mayor Dowden Calvillo.
Aye. Let the record show that we are pursuing at this time the solar interconnect bids for the PD and the courtyard. All
Okay,
right.
and then I would like to make another motion.
Yes.
Madam Mayor. A motion, I forgot my language. A motion to
How about if it's the
Direct-
same motion? You
Same-
could almost, substitute the previous motion, but put the sites in.
okay,
Why don't you
So-
do that?
I'd like to make a motion with the previous motion, substituted in with the following sites. And I would say 5 sites: wastewater treatment, city hall, parking, fire station 1, fire station 2, fire station 3.
And I'd also like to make a motion.
So would you like, there's not been a second. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. If you have a motion to amend, you may make a motion to amend, Madam Riddell.
I'd like to amend the previous motion to take out the wastewater treatment plant.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to amend the main motion to remove the wastewater treatment plant. So any further discussion on the motion to amend? Hearing none, so I want to just.
Wait,
make
which
it-
one do we vote on?
Yes, we're gonna
Second one first.
vote on the motion to amend first. So the motion to amend is to remove the wastewater treatment plant from the main motion. So if you want to support that motion, then you would, if you want to support that, then you would vote aye. Again, an aye vote would be to remove the wastewater treatment plant from the 5 sites that were listed in the main motion. Is everyone clear on the, act? We will be voting.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Madam Clerk, please call a roll.
Councilmember Amara,
I would vote no on that because I would like to include all 5.
Councilmember Berlant,
Aye.
Holmes,
Aye.
Riddell Harris.
Aye.
Mayor Dowden Calvio.
Aye. Now we'll vote on the main motion. The main motion now reads to pursue bids for solar applications at fire stations 1, 2, and 3, the city hall parking lot. All right. Is there any other?
Wait, I'm sorry.
Did I miss one?
Are you voting on my motion now?
Yes,
Now it's
but
the
without the
main motion.
wastewater treatment plant. We have to do the
Did you
original.
I'm sorry, I
I
wasn't.
said, so what I said was city hall, fire stations 1, 2, and 3.
Then I added wastewater treatment, didn't I?
But that motion, the motion to amend your motion was adopted, and so the wastewater treatment plant is no longer in the main motion. So now the main motion is just those.
Oh, I
sites.
see. Okay, okay.
Yes. Okay. All right. Is it clear for council what we're going to be
Yes.
voting on now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk, please call a roll.
Councilmember Amara,
Yes.
Berlant,
Aye.
Holmes,
Aye.
Riddell Harris.
Aye.
Mayor Dowden Calvio.
No, and let the record show the motion has been adopted on a 4-1 vote. All right. Is there any further discussion on this topic? We are done with item number 2, and let's please have a quick recess, 5 minutes. We'll reconvene at 8:40. Well, because I've been drinking a lot. Thank you very much. I just wanted to say that, in the interest of time, if you are able to move forward with the RFPs for the Courtyard and the PD quicker, that certainly can come before us separately from the other sites. So that, because time is of the essence. Well, I think that would, I'd rather get something in rather than, if the interest is really trying to expedite it, I'm simply saying that if you're able to bring that to us sooner, then we can at least get moving on those sooner.
So I will certainly defer to legal counsel, but I believe that the motion was pretty specific on how we will
Okay,
proceed with the
That's fine.
bid.
I was just saying because if you were able to get those sooner, but that's not a problem. So we'll just get them all at the same time whenever we're ready, and that's okay with me. That's fine. Thank you. All right. Okay, next item on the agenda is item number 3. And this really is just an informational item for discussion. I will defer to, it looks like, well, staff didn't do a staff report on this, but let's see here. This is an item that was put on the agenda at the request of council members Amara and Holmes, just for discussion and information. So there's no action on this. And so I guess I'll really, yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, I need to interrupt you back on the previous question. There were 2 motions. And so the first motion would allow us to go forward on just the 2 and then come back with the other 5.
Quickly.
Well, they
Yes.
both said as soon as possible.
Yeah,
so
right.
If
Said
if
as soon
the
as
sooner
possible.
as possible to do the 2.
Yeah.
then we
Right.
can get those back.
I don't want to confuse it further, but I just wanted to clarify there were 2 motions. If we had information to bring back on the 2 sooner than the other 5, we would do that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we did make 2 motions. That's I was kind of thinking, but. Okay, so we have this informational item on the agenda, and so I will actually just bring it to council members Amara and Holmes. If you'd like to.
Yes, I would. I think we have Centrica representative here, and I read thoroughly Centrica and Viola. Is Viola a representative here?
They were not specifically invited.
Okay, so if I just have some questions with Centrica, if you wouldn't mind answering some questions and helping us out.
And I
here.
just want to make sure, I want to defer to Gary. So, I mean, this is just we're not making any decision. We're just, what are we doing here?
Information.
Yes, but we're
I'm
not.
sorry, go ahead, Councilmember.
I'm just trying to ask some questions and get some information. That's all.
No, I understand. So is the question what the agenda title?
Well, I guess
allows?
we're just going to ask some questions on these documents that we're not considering. We're just, that's fine.
I think it's good
This
for
is-
us to understand a little bit more about the ways that we can improve the city. I think it also might be helpful for our budget considerations later. There's a lot of energy efficiency opportunities within the city. So I think getting that information that Centrica did a really good job of going through and telling us about our opportunities, I don't think that can hurt, and hopefully can help us to make those prioritization issue.
At a later
decisions.
date. Yeah. Well, again, it's information discussion only, so that's fine.
So Centrica, you want to step forward? Thank you. And thank you for coming and your patience and all the work you did. Appreciate it.
No problem.
You want to state your names, please?
Rob Hudson, Brooklyn Stewart.
Okay. First of all, I read through your RFQ, and I know you were involved with some very big projects, one being ARD, right, in Auburn, Auburn Rec Department.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay. And then the other, I think you said DMV, Department of Motor Vehicles.
Yeah, we've done a lot of work in California. Department of Motor Vehicles, the headquarters, is a project that we've recently completed. We're also working with the field offices. So, yeah.
And do you recall, like for ARD, just off the top of your head, I mean, oh, here it is. So the value of services was 2.1 million, and you did it in from 20 to 22. And their annual savings is 95,000 in year 1.
Correct.
Wow, very impressive. Then the other question I have is, you heard our discussion on interconnect applications. And is that a lengthy process? That's something that you would be doing. You do? I mean, you're a vendor to do that.
Yeah, what
sort of-
we had proposed, when we responded to the RFQ, the request for qualifications, what we had proposed was a plan to proceed with what the process is called the investment grade audit. And that really is a process where you are identifying what makes sense and what does not. If the city council requested to proceed with the interconnection applications, that process is relatively easy. The single line drawings that would be created would be done in-house. And so it would take a matter of days for all sites.
And would it take much staff time? City staff?
Yeah, I mean, the answer would be no. I mean, I think Councilmember Riddell Harris, what she was referring to is more down the line, how much time would take, and especially as noted with the wastewater plant, there's a lot that has to be untangled there. You know, in working with the staff, we identified there's a lot of stuff going on there, and that was part of what our proposal was, to assist with that, to untangle that. So the idea would be that we are taking some of that labor off of staff, as opposed to having them put together the full RFQs and managing the whole thing. We have professional project management in-house, and would take that. So that's the intent that we had detailed in our RFQ response.
The interconnection application, even at the wastewater treatment plant, none of that process would have to be figured out. Whether that's going to be bought, an existing upgrade, none of that'll have to be figured out, because we would just size the solar based on the current usage. And the way the process works is you can go down in size. So, or throw that whole thing out altogether, because if that doesn't work, then it doesn't work. But what we need is really just filling out the paperwork for this. We'll have the single line drawings all complete. So for the interconnection application for all 7 of the sites, the amount of time we would use of Mengel's is pretty low.
And so do you think it's going to be difficult? I mean, would you as a vendor want to do 2 sites and then 5 more? I mean, is that make it separated out? Does that make it more difficult? I'm just trying to understand from your perspective, if we'll even get applications.
How would you like to address that?
I'm not sure how to answer that, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
They really are only going to speak to their own process, and they're not going to speak on behalf of other businesses that are competitors. I wouldn't expect you to comment on what the competition's going to.
Yeah, that'd be difficult. Yeah, I would have a hard time answering that.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's fine. That's fine.
as previously discussed, typically the interconnection application is part of a project that's already put together, financed, everything. When you're pulling it out separate with no guarantee that a project moves forward, it kind of gets very complex. And
yeah,
if one company does the interconnection application, the other company that may come in to build it is not going to want to follow what's already been done, because things change. And so it gets right.
Okay. And so you heard the discussion also on solar and how it's becoming obsolete, so to speak, because it doesn't store. It's a different way of storing. There we can use the electric power cars to do that, get the battery.
You mean storage is becoming obsolete? Solar?
Is that, I think
No,
that's.
no. All I was saying is that they're not gonna pay you as much for putting it back on the grid. So by storing it in your facility, you're able to still get the value of that solar because you can use it in your building versus
Right.
having to export it to the grid and use the grid as a battery.
Okay. So, yeah,
Yes, ideally, that would be the perfect world you'd want. But the size of the battery, especially like a wastewater treatment plant, would be bigger than your buildings are.
yeah,
And the cost is just astronomical.
yeah. So it's unrealistic to think
That's-
we're going to go that direction.
Right, right.
Well, at some point, remember cell phones, how big they were and now they're little tiny, I mean, things eventually,
I will say that all technology has a progression. I don't think the batteries are quite there yet to where they're cost effective and where they're gonna end up. Solar has been making there was big leaps and now they're kind of incremental.
So that's
leaps.
why,
And battery hasn't
maybe
gotten
this
anything-
project for 20 years would be a good thing.
It, I don't know if there's
And so then, also, my understanding is that, you would provide, if you were the vendor that we chose for 2 of them or 5 of them or all 7 or 6 of them, you would provide full transparency on the cost of the projects and my understanding is that if our savings aren't realized, that you have a curing process. Can you describe that?
Yeah. So our proposal and it was much more wide reaching than just the solar. The solar was, had I guess, an urgency to it with the interconnection application, time crunch that persists. But yeah, it was for infrastructure. So it was mechanical lighting, looking at a lot of different things. So identifying things that when you guys are talking about 4217, that the concept there, and I don't know the author of that legislation, but the idea of it was be able to use energy savings or resource savings to fund infrastructure upgrades so that you don't have to come up with capital. As one of you mentioned, that idea that you'd be able to do it budget neutral. That was what our proposal was ultimately, or I guess holistically looking at the city's infrastructure. And again, that idea of having your public works staff, the idea is to remove, again, some of the responsibility that they've got in replacing HVAC units when they fail, street lights, just lights within your buildings. The idea is to upgrade and refresh your facilities and using the energy savings to do that. So that is what our proposal was centered around.
Thank you. And,
And I'm sorry, if I could just add one more point. One of the points that you made earlier about the efficiency first before generation, 100%. That is exactly the process and the way that it's done. So we agree with that.
and, you also, in your sample scenario, you showed that our city can save how much?
That's it.
483,000. Yeah, $483,844
Is that a
Annually.
year?
annually.
And-
Yeah, I mean, a big part of that is solar, obviously.
Would it be
Um,
possible to give us the breakout of what that energy efficiency number is? Just separate, just because I'm curious on what that, I don't mean you have to have it tonight. Is that?
I mean, I could show you, you've got it right here. I think you guys all have this.
Off the top of my head.
Okay, so we broke it down by street lighting, the PG&E owned street lighting, so you have 2 different ones. You have lighting retrofit and control, so that's all your interior and exterior lighting. And then you have HVAC replacements on those that are over 15 years old.
I'll have to go look back at it again.
Yeah, so each one of those has an assigned cost savings. So total utility savings for the HVAC is $12,000 annually. Lighting retrofit, 37,000, the PG&E lighting, 108,000, street lighting owned by the city is 10,000, solar PV, 320,000.
And normally you use, so you put lighting retrofits together with HVAC because HVAC doesn't normally have as good of a payback. So you kind of mush them together.
And is there anything else that you'd like to add and tell us here? You've been to a lot of work and trouble, and I really appreciate it. I was able to read it, and I think it sounds like you have a very good product that you produce and gave us here. And
Yeah, I mean, our intent is to be there to support the city. I live in, well, North Auburn, so it's not Auburn, but I live here. I'm a resident. We have worked with Auburn Recreation District, so our team is here in the community. Even though we're owned, Centrica is a large company. Our team here in Placer County and in Rockland does a lot of work in Northern California. So we very much so are in the community, and that's why we responded to the initial RFQ that was put out by the city that we responded to. And so we certainly will look at anything that you guys are putting out to further. We want to do what we can to improve the city and provide assistance in any way that we can within our capabilities.
Right.
And we have a lot of experience with cities and counties throughout California. The whole concept of the savings paying for the project, I mean, that's what we do. So there'll be a loan that's taken out, but those loan payments get paid by the savings. So that's kind of the way we look at smaller locations. The city of Corning's a really popular one where we did a lot of work there, and they didn't have the money for down payments or any of that kind of stuff. So we gave them this path to be able to go through and fix a lot of their problems. And they were definitely appreciative of that.
Good.
It's something we like to do just because, I mean, it gives us work, but also gives the these communities things that they can't get to. So even places like the wastewater treatment plant, kind of looking at it as very complex. When we put that together into a package, you can see that it makes sense. So that's actually going to be one of your best savings, because this is your last year at the wastewater treatment plant where the PPA cost you're paying per kilowatt is less than what PG&E or Pioneer is charging you for it. And the problem is, it's 2010. You've got another 10 to 15 years of each year that price goes up by 3% because that's in their contract.
Yeah.
So in 5 years, you're going to be paying a lot more per kilowatt hour at the wastewater treatment plant. So this is just one of those ways we looked at trying to cut the cost there. So I kind of hate to see it thrown out, but I know where you're coming from.
So do you think our timeline, we're cutting it pretty close, huh?
Yeah, we are getting close. Our solar project director wanted to have all of our solar projects put together by mid-February, and we pushed them to end of February because, yeah, it is that process of, if it's nice, straightforward, simple, then it'll go through and there won't be any questions back. It's if you get questions back, and that's where you can get into trouble, because that process of turning around and getting it back to them, get your approval, that's the hard part.
Right. So it sounds like we need to jump on it.
Yeah, I definitely recommend that.
The CPUC has been talking about NEM 3.0 for a while, and I appreciate the fact that you've been in discussions with the Sustainability Committee on this. But it was the other vendor that brought up the whole issue of NEM 0.30, because I think, the Sustainability Committee was working on just solar for a while, and then they got sidetracked into this whole other arena. But I don't know, were you aware of that 3.0?
We've been aware of this for more than a year.
Okay, good.
They've been talking about NEM 3.0 for years,
I
and
know.
there's question that people didn't even know if it was going to go through this time or if it was going to get pushed again. It's gotten pushed a lot of times. So
It's
Ju-
something, my point is,
Yeah.
is that NEM 3.0 is not something that's brand new.
no,
NEM point.
no one knew what the dates were going to be on.
Yeah,
though.
but this has been on the horizon and we've known that it's been
Well,
out there.
NEM 2.0 is very not cost effective for utilities, and it's bad for non-solar customers because they're subsidizing solar customers.
right.
So I mean, we knew that it needed to change at some point. Not all utilities have switched, but it's a process. But of course, you've got solar providers that are going to be upset about it. So
Yeah, yeah.
Just to point out that Viola brought it up because PUC announced they were going to consider it at December 15th, 5 days before they came to our meeting. So
Yeah.
these guys already knew about it.
Right, right. Yeah. My point is just that NEM 3.0 is, we've been talking about it, it's not something that's brand new. It just sparked up on. So, yeah.
I feel like for most people, it's something that pushed people over the line if they were thinking about it. It was, so most people already had an idea. It normally isn't something that pushes people to do brand new stuff that they haven't really thought about before.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Mike, did you have more questions? Okay. And if there's anything else, let us know, but otherwise, thank you.
Oh,
really.
I'd like to, are there any other questions? From
I
the
was just gonna
council?
say, can you explain the PG&E owns our streetlights thing a little bit, just so that people understand what that means? It's a complex thing, and so that's.
But
what-
yeah, it is. And it's not something that they're super motivated to just hand over because they make.
I was asking if they could explain the whole PG&E owns our streetlights thing.
Oh,
Not all of them.
Some of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they own most of them. It's, yeah, there's a whole series of LS1, LS2, LS3, LS4. This is the tariffs for streetlights. And they break it down into ones that are specifically owned by PG&E. PG&E does the maintenance and they charge you a rate for that. So that's the top, and all the way at the bottom is you own it, you maintain it, and you pay a certain rate for that.
Okay.
The problem is that top tier where PG&E owns it and does everything to it, they really charge you for it. When you own it and you're maintaining it, your cost is what, 1/10?
Yeah.
Yeah,
it was
broken down.
10%.
Classification called street light operator.
Yeah, so we have to figure out,
Go around and maintain the street light.
we have to say, yeah, we have to figure out if our costs are gonna be higher to maintain our own versus PG&E. Yeah.
Yeah, so that analysis was done. I mean, you were $100,000. I mean, they are making a lot of money on owning those and then charging you to lease them. So yeah, that was definitely part of what the plan we put together was to buy those back.
And retrofit them to LED.
And then retrofit them to LED,
And then you're not gonna touch them for at least 10 years.
which I think would make
Until they get
jobs
hit.
easier.
Then, yeah,
You can't take into account those magnetic poles that people run into.
I know. Any other questions? Councilman Berland, do you have any questions? I just want to say for the purposes of the record, I know, Centrica, that you are here at the invitation of the Sustainability Committee. I'm not aware that the Sustainability Committee had invited any other vendors here. So, and staff didn't invite anybody, just because, this was just an informational item. But I just wanted to say that the others were not extended an invitation to come. And so they certainly could have been here, but they were not exclusively extended an invitation as Centrica was. So, but thank you for your time. Thank you
Yep,
very
we
much.
appreciate the
Thanks for all your
opportunity to be here.
support with everything. We appreciate it.
All right. I also just wanted to make it very clear for the purposes of the record that this project now for the application for solar interconnect is now in staff's lane. And so I just want to make that very clear. Staff, you control this now. You are to discuss this with potential bidders. This is now on you. Thank you to the Sustainability Committee for your efforts, but this really needs to come now to staff. And so I want to make sure that's very clear. And if they need any assistance, then they will reach out to you. But this needs to be a staff driven at this point. It really is not appropriate for our advisory committees to negotiate with potential vendors. You're not subject to the same requirements as staff or elected officials are with regards to FPPC.
And I
Form
I
7.
just want to
just
interrupt
wanna
you for a
please-
minute.
No,
Our city manager was in on all the negotiations.
I am going to finish my point.
But let's be
I
informative.
did not say that staff were not involved. What I am saying for the purposes of the record is that this point moving forward, this is in staff's hands now. And that if they need assistance, they can certainly request that, but this needs to be with regards to staff. And again, for our committees that are advisory, the only committee we have that has the authority to take action is really the Planning Commission. And so we just need to be cognizant of that, that any of our advisory committees, it can be sustainability, it could be the Arts Commission, the Endurance Capital of the World Commission. We need to be mindful of what's happening with regards to potential contracts and talking to vendors and so forth. We need to make sure that we're doing things lawfully and correctly and that we're following all the procedures. I'm not going to speak to what happened there, but moving forward, this is the direction that we're giving staff. So just wanted to make that clear and for the purposes of the record. All right, going on to the next item on the agenda is reports. City manager report.
I have no report this evening, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. City council member report. Any council member report? Councilman Holmes?
Turn on your mic. please.
Yeah, can you turn the microphone on?
Mic.
Thank you. That's gotta make sure we do that.
I met with the staff of our new congressman, and they're getting their district office settled up here pretty soon.
Who
It's
did you meet with?
yeah, what's her name? Shauna, I think it is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And they are in Rockland. And I have a meeting tomorrow with one of the state treasurer's staff members. So
What is that meeting about?
it's about maybe getting some investments into the Auburn area.
Are you working with Jonathan?
What's that?
You working with Jonathan?
With Jonathan? Oh, yeah.
Investments in Auburn?
Well, I've talked to
Okay.
Jonathan.
Okay, so
Let's move on.
do we have other council committee reports?
I do.
Okay, yes.
Yes, we had a very productive meeting with ARD and the Immigrant Trails nonprofit and Placer Land Trust, and it was Rotary was there. And so it's in regard to the pickleball / outdoor venue project. And that'll be coming forward hopefully soon, once we get all of our projections. We do have some preliminary
Where's that at?
pickleball. court.
No, where? You mean here at School Park Reserve?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay,
Yes.
The basketball court and amphitheater.
Oh,
This,
side-
so in, I think we've discussed it.
Yeah.
So it's just on the other side, just above the parking below. It's the old
Playground site.
Lincoln Way Playground site. It's really is refreshing to see us collaborate with our ARD. They've been wonderful. They're like the project manager. And same with the other entities, and everybody's super excited. The community's excited. I'm excited, and I'm hoping that the big desire here, the overwhelming motivation for this and the genesis was really to stop the vandalism that's taking place down in the park. And I'm almost positive this is a plan that will do it, because there'll be a lot of people like myself who won't put up with much from people vandalizing and going through there doing things that they shouldn't be doing. Along with that, this is our city-owned property, and it is in such disarray. I worry, from being an attorney, from a liability standpoint, people walk through there on their climb everything, and it's seriously a place that we should support and really put to use instead of have it an eyesore and a potential liability.
Are
So
there any ADA requirements that need to be?
we're
met?
looking into all that. Yes, ARD has staff that's looking into that. We're working on the pathway through the school park preserve
That's been.
is
funded.
moving forward. That's funded through the capital grant and very exciting. So anyway, expect that in the near future.
Very exciting. I'm waiting for that pickleball court.
Great.
Councilman Berlant, do you have anything to report?
I'll wait till the next regular meeting.
Okay, and I also will wait because the bulk of my meetings are this week, so. All right, seeing that there is no further business before us, I will hereby adjourn. Our next regularly scheduled meeting is the 27th of February unless we need to have.
of Spud.
Oh yeah, we're adjourning